Confirming right now. They asked me to do the countdown, so I'm now asking them to confirm.
Okay.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Wednesday, October 21st, 2020 meeting of the Urban Development Review Board. I am Vicky Toronto with the Planning Department.
Vicky, your camera's not on.
I apologize. Let me turn it on right now. Thank you for the reminder. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, Vicky.
According to the agenda, we're going to start now with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. Can you please all place your hand by your heart and pledge allegiance to the flag with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. The call to order, please, and the roll call.
Mr. Bermeo.
Present.
Mr. Pramui. Mr. Behar.
Present.
Mr. Lewis. Mr. Bosco.
Present.
Mr. Hall. Mr. Perez.
Present.
Mr. Santos,
He's here. Anthony,
oh, his microphone's not on.
Anthony, you gotta turn your mic on. Can you hear us, Anthony? Is he muted?
He's not muted. It's not registering. It's not showing a microphone there. So his microphone, it doesn't seem like he's muted the microphone. It seems like it's not actually turned on.
Anthony, we can't hear you.
Can we see his hand or something?
I believe it has to be verbal. Can you please confirm? Mr. Assistant City Attorney
Yes,
Gibbs.
has to be verbal.
Yeah, Anthony, we need to be able to hear from you.
Ms. Ligia Labrada.
Present.
Dominic Kanaya Adams, once he's gotten his mic back on, as Markham as present.
Right. Yes.
Okay. We do have quorum.
He's connecting to audio now.
Perfect. Mr. Santos?
Yes, I'm sorry I was not connected before. I'm here.
Not a problem. Thank you. We have quorum.
Okay, so I will then proceed with the statement of the chair. Pursuant to Executive Order number 20-69, extended by the Executive Order number 20-246, issued by the Office of the Governor, Ron DeSantis, on September 30th, 2020, municipalities may conduct meetings of the governing boards without having a quorum of its members present physically or at any specific location, utilizing communications media technologies such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Section 120.54, subparagraph 5, subparagraph B, item number 2 of the Florida statutes. Procedures for the public comment will be explained by the Assistant City Attorney shortly. The members of the Urban Development Review Board appearing remotely for this meeting are as follows: Mr. Robert Behar, Mr. Robin Bosco, Mr. Fidel Perez, Mr. Anthony Samses, and Ms. Ligia Labrada, and yours truly, Willie Vermelho, Chair. Madam Assistant City Attorney, please state for the procedures that will be followed during this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any person who is a lobbyist pursuant to Chapter 2, Article 6 of the Code must register with the city clerk and comply with related city requirements for lobbyists before appearing before the Urban Development Review Board. A person may not lobby a city official, board member, or staff member until registering. A copy of the code section about lobbyists is available in the city clerk's office or online at www.municode.com. Notice this virtual meeting was provided per the city code, including posting notice 5 days in advance of the city's administrative building in accordance with Section 62-59F of the city code. Any person may be heard by the Urban Development Review Board through the chair and upon registering pursuant to the published notice, but not more than 2 minutes on any proposition before the board unless modified by the chair. Since this is a virtual meeting as authorized by the governor of the state of Florida, members of the public wishing to address the body may do so by visiting miamigov.com/virtual boards to upload their comments or to submit their written comments via the online comment form. Members of the public may also call 305-250-5343 to provide comments via the dedicated City of Miami public comment voicemail. All comments submitted will be included as part of the record for this virtual meeting and will be considered by the board prior to taking any action. The city will accommodate any speakers desiring to appear in person, subject to all applicable emergency measures in place to prevent the further spread of COVID-19. Speakers who appear in person will be subject to screening for symptoms of COVID-19. Any person exhibiting any symptoms of COVID-19 will not be permitted to enter City Hall. All interested parties are required to abide by all state, county, and local emergency orders and are urged to remain at home and practice social distancing. If the proposition is being continued or rescheduled, the opportunity to be heard will be at such later date before the board takes action on such proposition. When addressing the board, the member of the public must first state his or her name, his or her address, and what item will be spoken about. When the board takes action on votes or any proposition before it, it shall do so by a roll call vote, which shall be recorded by the liaison and included in the record. A video of this meeting may be requested at the Office of Communications or viewed online at mymigov.com. Please silence all cell phones and other noise-making devices at this time. Any persons with a disability requiring assistance, auxiliary aids, and services for this meeting may notify the city liaison. Please note, board members have been generally briefed by city staff on items on the agenda today. Access to the meeting. The city is using Zoom to hold its October 21st, 2020 virtual Urban Development Review Board meeting. Zoom is a cloud platform for video and audio conferencing, collaboration, chat, and webinars across mobile devices, desktops, telephones, and room systems. In order to ensure that the public has the ability to view the meeting, the city's communications department will broadcast the meeting through all the usual channels and avenues that are provided when a meeting is held fully in chambers at City Hall. The meeting can be viewed live on Miami TV at miamigov.com/TV through the city's YouTube channel or Comcast at channel 77 within the city of Miami. The broadcast will have closed captioning. Additionally, the city has not selected a virtual platform that requires the public to purchase or download any additional software or equipment to watch this meeting. From the Zoom platform that the participants will be appearing remotely, the public will have no discernible difference in their ability to watch this meeting. Comment. The city has developed several new methods of ensuring public comment for virtual meetings. One, the first option allows the public to provide public comment via the dedicated City of Miami public comment voicemail by calling 305-250-5343, where individuals are able to leave a 2-minute message that will be played during the virtual board meeting. Additionally, the public comments via the city's online comment form. The comments submitted through the comment form, if any, have been distributed to the board members and city staff so that board members can consider the comments prior to taking any action. Additionally, the online form will remain open for this meeting to accept comments and distribute to the board members up and until the chairperson closes public comment. For all of the aforementioned options, all the comments received will be included in the public record of the meeting. The city has also provided instructions explaining how the public may submit comments via the public comment options previously stated. Those instructions were provided in the notice to the public and published online at miamigov.com/virtual boards. Additionally, like any other UDRB meeting, the public may also provide public comment at City Hall. The city set up a terminal in the event members of the public travel to City Hall to provide public comment. However, due to COVID-19, all speakers desiring to appear in person will be subject to all applicable emergency measures in place to prevent the further spread of COVID-19. Speakers who appear in person will be subject to screening for symptoms of COVID-19. Any person exhibiting any symptoms will not be permitted to enter City Hall, but will be able to participate through the remote options described above. The public comment options established and provided for this virtual board meeting comply with Section 286.0114 and Section 120.54 Florida statutes. The city has published an agenda as well as included in the notice to the public pursuant to our city code and the items and topics that will be discussed at the virtual board meeting. Additionally, the public has been given the opportunity to provide public comment during the meeting, the terminal at City Hall, and the online public comment form within reasonable proximity and time before the meeting and during via the public comment voicemail and online public comment form options. Moreover, Section 286.0114, subsection 4C of Florida statute specifically authorized the city to prescribe procedures or forms for an individual to use in order to inform the board or commission of a desire to be heard, to indicate his or support opposition or neutrality on a proposition. The city, through these public comment options, have provided several different procedures and forms to indicate, among other things, his or her support, opposition, and neutrality on the items and topics to be discussed at this virtual board meeting. The city provided information on how to submit these comments in the notice to the public on a dedicated webpage and via certain social media channels. Board members, are you comfortable with all the notice provisions set forth in these uniform rules of procedures we have established for this virtual meeting?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Assistant City Attorney.
Thank you.
Vicky, can we have our first item?
Well, do we have any public comment, Vicky?
No voice.
You're mute. Vicky, you're mute.
I apologize. Oh, no, we do not have any pre-recorded public comments, and I do not see anybody at the terminal.
Perfect.
Would now be the time to close public comment?
If the chair wishes to do so.
Yes.
Okay, before we start listening to the items, we have a couple more on our list. We have to do, there's two board members who have requested absence waiver. It would be Mr. Ignacio Pamui and Mr. Dean Lewis. Can I get a motion approving or denying?
Okay,
Motion to approve it.
Motion to approve both Dean Lewis and Ignacio Permuy.
I second.
Seconded by Ms. Labrada. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Yes. Yes.
It's approved.
Motion passes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The next item on the agenda is the UDRB meeting for November. The City Commission has scheduled a special meeting on the regularly scheduled date of November 18th at 10 a.m. We are not sure as to how long that meeting is going to take place. And since this meeting, it takes us, we kind of start at 1, but the meeting officially starts at 2. It's city staff's recommendation that we cancel that meeting and reschedule to another day.
What, do you have any, I think the recommendations make sense. I don't think they'll end before 1 o'clock. Do you have a recommendation of an alternate date?
I have looked at the calendar, and in order to stay consistent with the 2 p.m. start time, we have Tuesday, November 10th, Friday, November 13th, Monday, November 23rd, and Monday, November 30th.
Did you say Tuesday, November 10th?
Yes.
The regular meeting was scheduled for
For
the following
Wednesday, the 18th.
The 18th. I recall that Friday is a bad day for a number of us. I don't know.
I agree with that. No Fridays.
The 10th on Tuesday works good for me, but I don't recall the other dates. Do you have?
Monday the 23rd and Monday the 30th.
For me,
Monday the
Fridays are bad. I don't know about the rest of you. I would prefer on a Tuesday.
Tuesday's fine for me.
Yeah, I have on reoccurring conflict on Tuesdays.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm good. I'm good Tuesday. Mondays is difficult day for me as well. So my preference will be Tuesday, Wednesdays, or Thursdays.
Unfortunately, the only day that we have available is Tuesday the 10th.
That works for me.
Is that a problem for you, Robin?
Yes, I have a conflict. I have a 3 o'clock appointment that I can't change.
Then we'll give Mr. Bosco an excuse absence.
Okay, we will request it at that meeting.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
okay, Robin.
Thank you. So the consensus is that we will have the meeting on Tuesday, November 10th at 2 p.m.
2 p.m., correct.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, are you ready for the first item?
Yes, we are.
Let me promote the attendees to panelists. One moment, please. And I am adding the last one. Okay, the first item is file ID 7976, It's a resolution recommending to the Director of the Planning Department approval or denial of the project, also known as the district, located at 225 and 233 North Miami Avenue, Miami, Florida. The subject property is zoned T680O. It is located within the downtown Brickell Met Office, and it is a hotel, multifamily residential, and retail. These are the requested waivers that are associated with the project. 1. Waiver pursuant to Article 7, Section 7.1.25A16, requested to permit a reduction of the primary and secondary frontage setbacks above the 8th story to 10 feet for lots having one dimension less than 100 feet. 2. Waiver pursuant to Article 7, Section 7.1.2.5A16, requested to permit a reduction of the side and rear setbacks above the 8th story to 20 feet for lots having one dimension less than 100 feet. 3. Waiver pursuant to Article 7, Section 7.1.2.5A11, requested to permit parking off-site by ownership or lease within 1,000 feet of the property. 4. Waiver requested for up to a 10% increase in the maximum lot coverage pursuant to Article 7, Section 7.1.2.5A28. Number 5. Waiver pursuant to Article 4, Table 5 of Miami 21 to permit 2 residential loading berths to be substituted for 1 commercial loading berth. 6. Waiver pursuant to Section 3.3.5 and 5.6.1G of Miami 21 so that the project matches the dominant setback of the block and its context. This item is being heard because it's over by the UGRB because it's over 200,000 square feet.
Thank you, Vicky.
You're welcome.
Brian Dombrowski, 333 Southeast 2nd Avenue. I'm joined today by Iris Esquera and Eric Forden from the Related Group. I'm going to share my screen so I can discuss our requested waivers with you this afternoon. Sorry. You see my screen? Yes. Okay. So as Vicky stated, our property is at 233 and 225 North Miami Avenue in downtown. It's an exciting project. It is an infill project in the urban core. To give you some of the context, we are located on the intersection of Northeast 3rd Street and North Miami Avenue. We're directly across from the Parcel B project, which is currently under construction. We are diagonally located with the federal courthouse. We're in 1 block away from the government center, Metro Rail and Metro Movers. We're 1 block away from Brightline, and directly across the street from us is a Miami Parking Authority garage, which will come into play later because we are offsiting our parking. Our transect zone is T680O. It is the most intense transect zone in all Miami 21. Our future land use map designation is Central Business District with the UCBD overlay, and we are in the CBD residential density increase area, which allows 1,000 units per acre. Our lot is narrow and a little tight, and that's why we're asking for the waivers that we'll get into shortly. We have only just over 14,000 square feet. We're proposing 288,000 square feet of FLR, 343 residential units. We have around 2,300 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor, all contained within 37 stories. And like I said, we have no on-site parking, and we're proposing that off-site. I know Vicky went through them, but I wanted to break down our waivers into 3 separate categories. We have our building configuration waivers, we have parking and loading waivers, and we have a dominant setback waiver. As you'll note here on the survey, we have a lot dimension under 100 feet, which creates a very narrow site. Miami 21 allows narrow sites like this to reduce upper level setbacks above the 8th story to create a developable lot. Otherwise, we would have a 30-foot rear setback. We would have a 20-foot front setback. And with these narrow site dimensions, we would have a site that would be basically undevelopable. We're also asking for a lot coverage waiver. Right now, we're required a pretty substantial 950 square feet right-of-way dedication. That's 7% of our lot area is being dedicated for right-of-way purposes. Our requested waiver is for a 5% increase. Miami 21 typically allows 80%. We're asking to go to 85%, but we're still exceeding the required open space. We're providing 12% where 10% is required. In the T680 transect zone, when you're located within 1,000 feet of a Metrorail or Metromover station, there's no residential parking requirement. Our only parking requirement on this site is the 2,300 square feet of ground floor commercial space. There is a Miami Parking Authority garage located directly across the street where we intend to place our parking for both residential uses and commercial, for residential uses if required by the program. We are doing a loading berth substitution. We'd rather have more residential loading berths than the overly large commercial berth, just to allow more people to move in and out smoother. And our last waiver is for the dominant setback. Right now, located directly to the east of our project is the Miami-Dade College parking garage. That garage is located just 1.9 feet from the base building line. You can see it there on the left side of the screen. And on the other side of our building is the Miami-Dade College building, which is located along the property line as well. Does not provide any setback. And directly south of our project is an existing structure that actually extends 4 feet beyond the base building line into the undedicated right-of-way. We're just asking for this waiver so that we can match that context for this block, keep it uniform, and we're still doing everything we can to enhance the pedestrian experience in that area, providing a safe area while still respecting the block. I'm going to turn it over now to Charles Seeger from Seeger Suarez Architecture. Like I said, Eric Forden from the Related Group is on. We also have Juan Espinosa from David Plummer and Associates if you have any traffic questions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Charles Seeger.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Charles is having a little bit of a problem logging on, so he should be on momentarily.
Sorry to interrupt, Iris. He can hear everyone, but he has no access to hit unmute and present.
Oh, maybe Vicky can unmute him.
I think he's unmuted now. There we go.
There he is. I see.
Now we
I
see
see
him.
Charles.
All right.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but we see him.
Yeah. Well, at my age, you don't need to see my ugly face. So, so let me share the screen. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
First of all, good afternoon, everybody, especially my old friends on the board. This site is bounded by North Miami Avenue, 3rd Street here. Can you see my cursor and 4th Street? Excuse me, 2nd.
Yes, we can see your cursor.
The federal courthouse is here, the old federal courthouse. The new one is over here on the site. And this is a very small site that's sandwiched between Miami-Dade College parking garage, that's approximately 6 stories, and a 12-story teaching building for Miami-Dade, and an old 1-story retail box that's not a part of our site. So on the site, we have 2 streets, and we have the eastern boundary, which is on the property line, the adjacent building, as well as the south. And these are the context photos. The block as shown and as surveyed in our application has all the existing buildings are on the property line, and we're asking for a dominant waiver on the north and the west side. And from there, I'll take you sort of in a quick tour. I culled out some pages from the set and talk about the ground plane first, which is obviously of importance. We took the mass of the building and kind of arced it to kind of give reverence to the corner and then reverse the arc as well. So on the ground plane, there's a reverse curve indentation, a little platform to allow for the FEMA rules for height of the lobby to step up to a small lobby entrance that goes into the building. The loading alley, so to speak, or driving lane is parallels the garage and accommodates the number of loading required. We're asking for a waiver, as Brian said, from the larger size to smaller sizes. There's a slight retail box of almost 1,000 feet down on the southern portion, and then fire is hidden. The detector checks and fire access is all back inside here, out of behind the second layer. And then up here we have the manager's office in retail 3 and another little potential retail spot in the northwest corner. And from there, the next floor is volume primarily, except for a little piece over the vault. And then we start lining the edge with the units. The units are not micro, but they're small and efficient. And on the backside, adjacent to the garage, we have a basketball court and an internal common area, so to speak, with volume on the third level. And then it goes up from there. It repeats so that the liners go all the way up to the pool deck, and then there's more common inside this the backside here. And then we hit the pool deck, which is about 6 feet above the garage that's adjacent to it. We have a swimming pool, and we've punched a hole through the building with 2-story volume in this area here, and a couple of common area rooms flanking it. And then you start to see the overall mass of the building, how it's kind of twisted again to kind of turn the corner onto third. And then the symmetrical reverse side, partially over the pool on the east. And from there, we show the volume in the penetration through the building to give some relief for light and air on the pool deck level. Then the units start to fill in, and the building's fairly simple. It goes straight up with these units, and there's a central core, the shear walls that are necessary. It's 37 stories. It's fairly straightforward and simple. There are no balconies. There are sliding panels of glass above a knee wall of glass, and you'll see that in the rendering when we get there. And then on the roof, we've got the cooling tower enclosure in this area with mechanical backup boilers, etc. And then facing the east, we have a swim spa and some artificial turf to hang out in the sun and overlook the bay and the ocean from up here. And then we get into the renderings. They're mostly contextual, so if you don't mind, I'll zoom in and show you the building up close. This is the view looking southeast. And it's, like I said, a fairly straightforward banded building, very horizontal, and kind of familiar, very similar in a sense to I.M. Pei's older bank building. And if I can go here, full screen this, and do a little window for you. Better. The building has the hole for the pool deck, which is adjacent to the garage box, which is not ours. It belongs to Miami-Dade. Our parking is associated across the street. This is the slight arc and turn, some reference to the courthouse. And then this is the western side of the cooling towers, which are shielded with more of the same kind of floor-to-floor glass. And then down on the street, I can do this here, see. Down on the street, we have a canopy where the reverse curvature takes place at the entrance to allow a little more plaza area off the sidewalk. And then the little retail is in the corner. And this is the access to the service area. And then, of course, we have the standard requirement for the sidewalks, and then the necessary ADA ramp and steps up to the facade. And then if I exit this, the next page, whoops, sorry. The next, I did that right? Yeah, okay. The next page is the context in the other direction. With all due respect to Miami-Dade, there are boxes, and you don't see much from this side, but it starts to show the roof looking back towards the east, and its general context with the surrounding area. The next view is, again, a context view from the Miami-Dade building, which abuts it, and then the side elevation and our street scene and the existing one-story box here. If we go again to see the street. So here's our street trees, which are a requirement, and then the first floor is double height and recessed with the columns and the Parker Sheriff sorts that canopy cover at the entrance. A slight green planter on top of the egress stair that's required for the new number of egress people coming from the pool deck. And if I go up here. So here is the southwest view. And in context again, this building is kind of under construction, so it's kind of trumped up by the renderer, but our building is fairly accurate. This is the two existing Dade County buildings again. And whoops, sorry. So here's our pool, and we positioned our floor and elevation so that when people are laying or walking around on the pool, there's about a 6 or 7 foot drop down to the slab of the upper parking level, which is very seldom used. So our pool has some light and sun in the mornings. And from there, we have a street rendering and a pedestrian view, which is always important to us, as well as you guys. And so what we're talking about generically is a sliding panel here, where they can open it up and get light and ventilation, and it kind of pretends to be a balcony, and then a knee wall that's low enough that when you're sitting at your dining room table, you can still look out under a pane of glass, which gets up to the railing height. And that banding and the coloration of the concrete stucco, the mullions, and the glass is all darkened to create the horizontality that we're looking for. And what else can I speak to? And of course, the street scene is pretty self-evident. We've got a black metal cantilevered structure coming off the support beam for the 2-story glass. And then we're going to use something either steel like a Corten, but in a ceramic, which may also be wood, sort of a ceramic though, at the major 4 columns at the front and also up on the pool deck. Here we go again. And then the next picture. This is a view on the western side of the aperture through the building, where we're going to have a little cafe kind of thing for entertainment or what have you for the people that live there. And then this is the view back to the east through our pool deck glass rail overlooking, bypassing hopefully the garage, and then our columns I told you about, similar to, there's some bush hammered, so to speak, marble we're gonna have here, which is on our drawings. And then we go up on the roof and we have a panorama of the beach and the bay. The swim spa, some seating, planters, etc. So for people to enjoy the rooftop, and also at the same time, behind it is the enclosure required for, not required, but also wanted for the cooling towers. Here's a view looking northeast. So it should be pretty spectacular up here, even though it's not phenomenally high building, tall enough. And then in terms of our materials precedent, there's the chiseled limestone I talked about, white stucco for the bands, the dark stucco in the columns that are in between the mullions, the black and metal and the dark gray glass for the banding, dark gray louvers, and the faux smoked oak. And these are some of our previous buildings where we've done the puncture through the building in 50 Biscayne, very successful. The pool was on the backside and you can still see the bay. Also in Brickell House is ours as well. The dark glass we used in Porsche. And we tried to keep this building fairly simple and not externally decorated a lot. And then in terms of the landscape material, we have the colors of the city requirement for the sidewalk. And then the pavers in 2 shades of gray. And then more pavers in the 2 shades of gray up on the pool deck to match. And again, the same pavers on the roof. And then in terms of landscape material, we're proposing to use satin leaf along the street trees, a little cluster of silver buttonwood to the southwest, and palms, foxtails on the north, and then ground cover where we can. There's not a lot of place to put this. Is a very small site. It's very constricted by the code, and particularly because the units are small. We have 343 units, or 334, 343 units, and because of that, there's an enormous amount of loading docks required because of the density. In Miami 21, it's related to density, as you know, and that kind of chewed up the ground here against the Miami-Dade College building. And then on the pool deck, we have as much foliage as we could get, and again on the roof. The data was supplied in our application set. There's 343 units, 99 2-bedrooms, 186 ones, 58 studios. Buildings 407 feet NGVD. The main roof is 393. It's 37 floors to the main roof. And we have 2,300 square feet approximately of retail. Again, it's not, one of the things I must mention is that it's very rare for me not to use every foot of the FLR allowable. The FLR allowable is 540,000 feet. This building only uses 288,000 of it, kind of a rare occasion. So there's nothing enormously difficult about designing the buildings. We didn't have to put 20 pounds in a 10-pound bag as usual. And that's, I think, really the crux of it.
There was only one other thing I wanted to add, and thank you, Charles, for that. The part of the site, we had to dedicate about 950 square feet for right-of-way expansion. So one of the things and you can see it on some of these drawings here on the left-hand side where it says BBL. Not only did we have to do the corner radius, but we also had to do a 5-foot strip along North Miami Avenue, which created some of the hardships in the design. With that, we conclude our presentation and we're open for any questions from the board.
Any of the board members have questions or comments?
I have a couple comments.
Yeah, why don't you go first?
All right. I think you have a very beautiful project within the very difficult site. The only problem I see is by having the parking off-site, you will have I think that you will have a problem with the traffic, people dropping and picking up people from this building, since you have a lot of apartments. It's very challenging to try to put some type of drop off for cars or Ubers or anything like that. But there might be a possibility of moving the lobby up, as a sky lobby in second, third floor, or whichever, and having a smaller area in the bottom, so you can utilize somehow. I know it's difficult. Some type of cars going into your site for this purpose. I think that's probably my main concern, that people are just going to stop in the middle of the street and you're going to have a traffic problem. Otherwise, I think they've done an excellent job with this small site. I mean, you're asking a lot of waivers, but I think that's probably just benefit the building by doing what you've done. But I do think you have a major problem with the circulation of cars.
Can you hear me, Iris? One of the things we considered was the parking is not only across the street, but there's a possibility also of a relationship in the future with the Miami-Dade parking garage. But this is going to be, even though it's a for sale product, it's going to be operated, best I can tell, the client's wishes, as a hotel. And hotels use a predominance of Uber and Lyft and those sort of things, as well as the reality of all these loading spaces being used. It's pretty remote, since the units are going to be, furnished. There's not going to be a lot of, other than in the initial setup, these are going to be vacant. So to answer your question about, dropping off and entering, I suspect, because we'll probably use pavers in here as well, and that this area here is going to become more of vehicular access than loading, even though the loading is a requirement. To have 5 loading spaces for a building that there's nobody moving in or out of, other than staying there and bringing their luggage. I think we have the ability, with the width we have, with the 20 feet and the backup, to utilize this more as a internal port cochere, even though it's not in the code, so to speak.
That could be a possibility, but that's like back of the building, and you're still going to need some loading spaces, and you're going to have somewhat of a conflict when people are loading things and the truck is on the way. It's a possibility, but I don't think it's going to work. I think it's probably better just to have a drop-off area in the front, eliminating some of those spaces in front of the elevator and pushing the lobby someplace else. I mean, it's not a huge impact to the building, but I think it's something you're going to need.
And if I can also add, there is parking on North Miami Avenue across the street, and one of the on-street parking where you could typically rent those valets. We've been trying to see, we have to work with the county because North Miami Avenue is actually a county right of way, to see about adding on-street parking on eastern side of North Miami Avenue. So that's something that is in the works that we'll be able to accomplish. But there is across the street on North Miami, directly on us, on-street parking the whole length of it. It's just on our side, it's not proposed.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Is there like any agreement or any how do you make sure that the building will have these parking facilities in the future? How do we know that these facilities will always be there?
So for the required parking, our retail is triggering required parking, and we enter into a long-term lease with the Miami Parking Authority for use of X amount of spaces in their garage for the retail. Now, operationally, we anticipate that some of the units are also going to need parking. Not all of them, it depends on the unit owner. At which point we will also proffer for them to have parking there. There's plenty of parking in that garage to accommodate our uses and our intended uses for that. And actually that garage is even being expanded as part of the Parcel B construction that's going on. Additional spaces are being added. I think it was like 300 additional spaces are being added to the garage for operational purposes.
So somehow you will have parking forever there.
Well, if we don't have it, just the way that it works with the city is if you don't have it, you have to provide a parking covenant. If you don't have it, then you have to provide it in another location within 1,000 feet of the site. So that it happened to me on another project where the parking site where we had the assigned parking was going to get redeveloped, and they couldn't accommodate the additional parking spaces. We had to find another location within 1,000 feet and move the required parking there and submit a new lease to the city.
You mentioned that the owner, so this is a condominium basically?
Yeah, this one's going to be, I anticipate, and I have Eric Ford in here, this is anticipated to be a condo product. We may end up doing some apartment hotel to allow for the units to have short-term rental. We're looking at the market conditions to finalize the final uses for that. But even in apartment hotel uses, the city treats them as residential units. So they're calculated based on, impact fees is like a residential unit, parking like a residential unit. But operationally, we're looking at that as an avenue.
So when a person buys a unit, they give him a parking facility, a parking space?
Right. If they want a parking space with the unit, we will give them a license with the MPA to be able to have that parking space, but it's off-site. It's literally next to the next.
Tony, we have a license agreement already with the MPA for 344 spaces.
And what's the total capacity of the parking?
Of the MPA's garage?
Yeah.
I don't know what their total capacity is.
I know that Parcel B is adding a lone 300 to it already. And I think it has, the existing garage has over 1,000 spaces, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
Anthony, is your question because you're thinking whether the MPA is selling the spaces more than once?
I don't know.
That would be a great business model, wouldn't it?
A great business model.
A parking Ponzi scheme, huh?
I don't think the MPA can do that.
No, but it's an interesting question because I think more and more developers like Related are coming. As a matter of fact, this is not the first time Related does this.
Yeah, the loft,
right.
The loft
yeah,
1
the
or
loft
2.
1 and 2 were the same program, and we did the same thing.
But it's a totally different level of building, I think. This is a little bit more sophisticated.
It's elevated.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a little more elevated. It's a little more finished.
Yes.
Oscar, Ricky, and I developed Loft 1 and Loft 2, and this is kind of the next generation of that product.
Yes, definitely. I think
Are there
that
any
we
other
are,
comments or questions from members of the board?
okay.
If nobody else, I do. Mr. Seeger, you know, you're working with a very difficult site, and you know, it's really hard, challenging to be able to accommodate. The program, you know, the 288 units and everything else that you're doing. I have a few concerns, same as I share with my colleague Fidel on the drop off and the parking, and Mr. Bemayo and Samson have been talking about parking on other projects, and I'm not in favor of parking, you know, not having zero parking on the building. But more importantly, you showed us some examples of two buildings, 50 Biscayne and Brickell House. They're a very beautiful building, very simple, but they were articulated a lot more than this building is. And I'm a bit disappointed that this building is just very one-dimensional going up. It's really, other than that curve, it's really, you know, a broken down box in comparison to the other two examples, which really make a huge statement. I know this is maybe something, you know, a little bit different product, but still it merits to have a little bit more. I'm a bit disappointed in the facade of this building. It really, when you squint your eyes, what you see is just a little block. To me, that's a lost opportunity that you had, especially when you showed me those two examples. I'm a bit concerned on that as well, other than the parking, you know, and the drop off. Again, it's a very challenging site, and it's very difficult. You know, that's my comments.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Let's see, Lihia or Robin?
Yeah, this is Robin. I've been, listening. First of all, it was a very good presentation, and I want to commend Charles for what I consider an excellent effort. I'm not sure I share some of the aesthetic concerns that some of my colleagues do. I believe he's treated this very straightforward and very simple, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's been handled very nicely, and I want to commend him for the work.
Thank you.
Lihia?
Thanks,
Any
Robin.
comments?
Thank you. I like Mr. Bosco. I also think this is a very elegant solution to the tight site constraints. I think the side profile was very elegant, and the breezeway that's cut through from one side to the other is basically making the best solution with what you have. I do have one question. I think we've already hashed out the whole parking issue. Some of the materials that you had mentioned during the presentation was using the Corten steel on the columns, but I didn't see any of those materials listed on your finish schedule or during that presentation on that slide. I saw some like faux wood. Is it the faux wood, which in turn would take
Large format ceramic, something in the brown is, whether it's, because they have large format ceramic now that, you know, emulates Corten, emulates, you know, faux, not looks exactly like faux wood, but has kind of a brown coloration to it. This was the client's request as part of the interior design package to kind of soften the hard edge. So there would be a ceramic large format tiles, so to speak, you know, put on the concrete. And,
for these exterior columns, for the columns in the lobby in the front?
yeah, it's the exterior columns. If you can still see the screen, it's the ones not only on the pool deck, but these three are on the pool deck, and then there's
And I think Lydia was talking down at the street level,
On the
Charles.
street level, correct.
both because they penetrate. So it's these three here, and then these three here, and then there's a few on the pool side and also on the roof. So we took the material in all the places, kind of like as an accent color in a sedate way, not more gray or white or whatever, but something in our plans show the faux wood, for lack of a better term, they're just large format, ceramic tiles, but not one by ones. They make them quite large today to ensconce the concrete. So that's what we had in mind there.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then my last comment was, at first, I think the first glance was, having this be a multifamily use, and living in Miami, I thought it was a missed opportunity to have balconies, but I thought it was a clever solution to have these sliding panels. Not ideal, obviously, where you'd like to be able to appreciate the outdoors, but considering how narrow the site is, I thought that was really clever. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
To answer Mr. Perez's, not Mr.
Thank you.
Mr. Vihar's comment about the articulation of the facade, it's actually very similar to 50 Biscayne. We used the white panels on the railings back then, on the balcony railings, to get that horizontal look. And of course, we had full-length sliding glass doors at 50 Biscayne as well. So if I can take you over to the 50 Biscayne shot, you'll notice that it's also very horizontal. I can zoom in maybe a little bit on that in case you can't see too much of it. But we thicken the slab. We have a knee wall. We have the balcony rail has a white perforated fritted panel to try to get that same horizontality going on in a banded way. Although obviously the lifted area has kind of some fun columns and stuff like that. But it was done, I don't know, 15 years ago now. And times changed. And we thought, it's because of its position at the courthouse area, that a more sophisticated, simpler, just nothing where there's a big effort today from architects, and nothing wrong with it, to kind of articulate the facade ad nauseum, and we were doing just the opposite.
So I get it. And by the way, that 50 Biscayne is still one of my favorite buildings that we have. So it's still 15 years later, it's still a very, very beautiful building. Okay. What I thought is that, and I think Ligia mentioned the opportunity to have balconies, something, I understand, it's a small site and we can't afford to lose, space for the balconies, so forth, so on. But that balcony gave you a little bit more depth to that facade, which, to me was very simple, but very elegant, very attractive. That's what I think that, 50 Biscayne has. It's still, again, like I mentioned before, it's a very simple, it just gave you that extra. And that's what I think that it was a little bit of, to me, and we've said it, a little disappointed that this one didn't try, didn't do a little bit more, but it's still, I agree, it's a very nice building. After seeing some of your work, I'm sorry to tell you, I'm a bit disappointed.
At the end of the day, it could be an office building.
Let me segue. So, I'm gonna vote for approval of this if someone makes a motion. But also being kind of a fan of 50 Biscayne, I think the only thing I wish that in its final execution that Charles might have been able to, and I realize he's dealing with cost, and he has a client there next to him, at least in the Zoom call.
Yes.
He has like 4 or 5 levels of non-rentable, non-sellable amenity stuff that's stacked on top of each other there on the back side, which is a lot of money already. And I'm sure there wasn't a lot of money left over for the skin when you really think of it. and every inch of stucco instead of glass or instead of a metal panel, which I think when you look at the IMPay building, which I guess Charles mentioned that this was trying to kind of play off on, that curtain wall system is metal, and if you look at the detailing on top and bottom of that metal, it has a certain profile that adds an element of elegance, and it's reflective because it's metal. It's not stucco, which is not going to reflect light as well. So the IMPay, even when you light it up, I mean, it's the skin is at a different grade, and so this is aspirational, but because I guess maybe cost, I know the level of excellence that you could have had in that. I mean, this wants to be a curtain wall system. It isn't, but it calls out to be. And I think that's the only place where I believe it falls short. It doesn't fall short to the point of me putting a condition, because I've seen the work that Charles has done, and I think this is a very challenging site. I think Charles was very diplomatic about the buildings that are next to it, and that, you know, he can't do anything about it, and they're going to be there for a long time. At the same time, on the other direction, he has some fine pieces of architecture, both in the old courthouse and in the newer courthouse, both in the materials and the execution. So he has, you know, the good and the bad just next to him with tremendous views. I like the design overall. I just wish that maybe there could have been a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of money being spent here in amenity areas and in space up to the level of that pool deck and immediately below it. I just wish that ribbon would be executed in a different fashion if there was money for it. And the same goes for the column that right now shows like if it's part of the glass, but in reality, unless it's treated like glass, you're going to see that painted stucco, which is really going to fade, in my opinion, probably poorly over time. I mean, we all know dark colors and the sunlight of Florida don't do well. So what right now looks like this black band going across, I don't think it's going to look as well. And there's where I think 50 Biscayne is a very different product. And it's why we all love it, because that glass line is way back. You have this very deep recesses. But when you put it up front, you really have a curtain wall solution. And then it really has to work like a curtain wall. And this is kind of like a value engineered curtain wall. So you want to make it look like a curtain wall, but we all know it's basically punch out windows on top of a knee wall next to a column that is stuccoed to look like glass. And so that's my only question. And whether, as Charles finishes this, and with related listening to this, is there any possibility of taking this to the next level? Because, I mean, there's no question. I don't know what they bought that 14,000 square foot for, but, you know, you're putting a lot of units on a small property, and maybe the land base is being so low. And this, again, this looks like an apart hotel, because I think Charles said that you don't need all those loading spaces because they come fully furnished. So, if it looks and feels like an apart hotel, who knows? So my question is, guys, can you look and see if maybe, and it may be the columns probably that worry me more than the rest, because right now you really want to look. I mean, the banding on the stucco is no issue as long as you don't have cracking and you maintain it and paint it every 15 years or so. That is always going to look white and should look nicely. But the glass column is
Willie, sorry to interrupt. Are you looking for maybe to uplight the columns at grade and at the breezeway?
No. I was just thinking, you know, in the overall tower. No, there where you have the openings, I think that's going to look spectacular. I mean, those openings are going to work nicely. And in the ground level, again, I realize you're going to use some kind of porcelain tile that looks maybe like wood, and it'll add some warmth. I think that is going to look fine. I'm just thinking about as you have these huge shear walls that go up at either third of the building all the way up, which on the face, my understanding from the materials that Charles was discussing, they're kind of finished with a skim coat, and I guess painted a dark charcoal to look like glass. That finish and that paint over time, that's the one I think is going to really fade the most of anything. And then those bands are really not going to look like bands. It's going to look like a checkered dark band of very dark and not so dark. That's the issue that I'm thinking about.
Really, I think, when we start to detail that, you're talking about these columns here.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
I think we can incorporate either when we do the window detailing, we can either do an aluminum painted to match the mullions, what we call a slab cover, or possibly even a piece of
spandrel glass.
Exactly, a piece of spandrel.
I think one of the two will preserve the look for posterity. I think either one would do it.
I don't know what the client will do to me. He'll probably paddle me when I get back home in terms of spending their money. But I think that can be accommodated, and it's not quite a curtain wall because it's also because of the heights of the glass. It's much less expensive because it's not.
Jose, Charles. I would rather do it in aluminum than have the spandrel glass.
The aluminum would do it, I think, just as well. Plus, you have aluminum anyway in the windows and the extrusion, so it keeps.
It would lend a much more homogeneous.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
that would work.
So if Eric says he would rather see the aluminum, I'll probably get killed when we sign off, but it's fine with me.
Anyway, I think it's a great looking project. I don't have the issues with the parking that some of my fellow colleagues do. I get their concerns, but this is kind of an urban American. I think the people and particularly if you go more in the hospitality, and with the transit and MPA right across the street, I don't have issues with that. So I congratulate the entire team, including your attorney.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no comments, is there a motion?
I wanted to make a comment and also make a motion, if I may.
Absolutely.
First of all, I wanted to congratulate Mr. Seeger for a wonderful presentation that I really enjoyed, very detailed, and so on and so on. To me, it's fascinating. What's fascinating is the fact that we're dealing with a building that has, I forget the number of units, there were 300 some units, 328 units or something?
343.
343.
343, that are condo units that are very small with no parking in a building that has a lot of amenities that is in the middle of a student town, in the middle of downtown. Maybe it's fascinating from a developer's point of view that you have the market, let's say, to sell this type of a unit. I mean, they have to be all purchased by non-families or something. I don't know. It's fascinating to me. I mean, the world must be changing.
I mean, it is securitized. Every time you have churches burning in Santiago, Chile, you have people putting their money in the United States.
That's another ball game altogether. But I mean, I think the building will end up being rented by the owners or something. I don't know. It's interesting. It's nothing to do with an architectural comment. It's fascinating to see the evolution of development concepts and development ideas in this area and so on. But I particularly am impressed with the architectural work of the architect and his presentation. There are some comments I have that were already addressed. Nobody spoke about the narrow facades, the north and south facades. I find them not giving justice to the elegance of the horizontality of the sides is broken by the verticality of the narrow units, and they could have been recessed or something else should have happened there, but I'm not Charles Seeger, so I can't say that. I would like to have a motion to approve the project And if the board has any specific recommendations or comments, you can go ahead and do so. But I am moving to.
So there's a motion to approve by Anthony Sanchez. Is there a second?
Yes, this is Robin Bosco. I would second that.
Okay, there's a motion on the table and it's seconded by Robin Bosco. Are there any comments on the motion as seconded? If there are no comments, Vicky, can you do the roll call?
Okay, so for clarification, because there are no conditions being proposed, it would be approved as is, as presented?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Anthony Sanchez?
Yes.
Mr. Robin Bosco?
Yes.
Mr. Bermeo?
Yes.
Mr. Behar?
Yes, yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
And Ms. Labrada?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0, approved with no conditions.
Thank you all
Thank
so
you very
much.
much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Be
you.
safe.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Don't forget those metal panels.
Don't worry. Thanks. Appreciate it. Sometimes I need the board to squeeze some dollars out of the clients. Have a nice one. Stay safe, Willie.
Take care, Sean.
Okay, I'm going to add now the participants for the next item number 2. Can you please raise your hand if you are participating in item number 2? Thank you. Iris, you were kept then.
Vicky, you can drop me.
To let me in. Sean. Okay.
I'm not sure if Mr. Dombrowski's staying for item 2. He
You
did
can
not.
drop me off.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, you out too.
Okay. Mr. Chair, would you like me to?
Yes, please proceed.
Give me one moment, I accidentally. Okay, so item number 2, file ID 8042. A resolution recommending to the Director of the Planning Department approval or denial of the project located at 2900 and 2930 Biscayne Boulevard, 2931 Northeast 2nd Court, 247 and 257 Northeast 29th Street, and 254 Northeast 30th Street. The subject property is zoned T636AO, and it is located within the Wynwood Edgewater Net District. The proposed project is multifamily residential and includes a grocery. Let me read the requested waiver. Waiver 1, waiver pursuant to Article 5, Section 5.6.1G to allow development of the ground level to match the dominant setback of the block and its context. Proposed survey, number 2, waiver pursuant to Article 7, Section 7.1.2.5A29 to permit a 10% reduction of the frontage setback above the 8th floor. Waiver 3, waiver pursuant to Article 5, Section 5.6.4D to permit along a primary frontage parking above the first story to extend into the second layer along the frontage if an art, glass, or architectural treatment of a design approved by the planning director with the recommendation of the UDRB is provided for 100% of that portion of the facade. 4, waiver pursuant to Article 5, Section 5.6.4E to permit along the secondary frontage above ground parking to extend into the second layer beyond 50% of the length of the facade, length of the frontage, if an art, glass, or architectural treatment of a design approved by the planning director is provided for that portion of the facade. 5, waiver pursuant to Article 5, Section 5.6.1F to allow pedestrian entrances spaced greater than 75 feet apart. 6, waiver pursuant to Article 4, Table 4 to allow up to a 30% reduction of required parking for development within 1/2 mile of a transit-oriented development or one quarter mile of a transit corridor. 7, waiver pursuant to Section 7.1.2.5A28 to increase the loading driveway entrance from 30 feet to 33 feet. And that
Thank you.
concludes the waivers.
Thank you, Vicky. If I could just check that we have I think a couple of my client, especially Russell Galbert, to make sure he has access and accepted as a panelist.
Okay, Russell needs to be included?
Yes. There may be others, but at least elevate him to a panelist status.
There you go.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Ethan Wasserman with Greenberg Traurig, 333 Southeast 2nd Avenue, here on behalf of the applicant. We do have a very large team gathered here virtually, including our architect, our landscape architect, various members of my client's development team, and my colleagues from Greenberg Traurig. So before turning it over to our design team, I want to highlight a few points. The project is located within a T636 transect. It's also in a great location. It's strategically located about 10 blocks south of the design district, immediately east of Midtown and Linwood. It's located along Biscayne Boulevard, which has existing transit options nearby, and there's a potential, from what we're hearing, for increased transit options in the very near future. It's really a wonderful mixed-use location in the larger context. The project before you is proposing 588 residential units and a 38-story tower. We have 748 parking spaces within the parking podium that is elegantly concealed within the project. But the most important aspect of this project is our large ground floor grocer. We cannot disclose the name of the grocer, but it is a nationally renowned organic grocer not currently in this area. If we could disclose the name, I think you would all be very thrilled to hear it. We do have a signed lease in place with deposits made on that lease, and so it's important that we build this project as soon as possible and deliver it. In terms of context, the project is located on an entire city block, between 29th and 30th Street North and South, and between Biscayne Boulevard and 2nd Court. Biscayne is obviously a primary frontage. That's the most important frontage. 29th and 30th are cross streets to 2nd Avenue, and 2nd Court is purely an internal, almost like a dead end between 29th and 30th. We do have platted alleys on this block. Those alleys have since been closed. That's already been approved by City Commission. That was important because there are currently many vehicular penetrations on Biscayne Boulevard and on 2nd Court. We're eliminating those penetrations, as you'll see, and we have obtained that approval already. It's important to mention that early on in the project, we met with planning and zoning because of the design principles required to have a large community grocer. You see, the project includes an incredible amenity, or what we feel is an incredible amenity benefiting everybody in this area. But that comes with certain requirements, and we needed to consult with planning and zoning at the outset. That's really the reason we have certain waivers included in this application to accommodate the grocery use and its impact not just on the ground floor, but as you go vertical. So, for example, in Miami 21, you need frequent doors and windows and spacing. So we're asking for a waiver of that, driveway widths, setback locations. These are all things Miami 21 doesn't accommodate well for this type of ground floor use, and that's why we're asking for these waivers. We are very happy that we have staff support on this application, on these waivers, and we're anxious to move this project forward. Russell Galbert from Crescent Heights is available to speak if needed. It's important to mention Russell is the managing principal of Crescent Heights, which, although is a global real estate developer, it has its local roots in South Florida. Its corporate headquarters is just a few blocks from this project. So they know the area well. They have a vested interest in this project and the neighborhood's general success. So now I will turn it over to Bernardo, but our entire team is available to answer any questions you may have.
Good afternoon, my of the board. Somebody was trying to speak. Sorry.
No, Bernardo, I just want to let you know I was sharing my screen to make sure everyone can see it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Let me give you a recap on the project. As you know, this property is 636 AO, and we have 588 residential units, and the building has 38 stories and a total of 450 feet. I should point out that we are required 246 parking spaces. We're providing 248, essentially this, what is required, almost to the exact number. We have 2 excess cars. And we have a podium height of 97 feet, which is lower than the permitted height for a podium. What really drives the design of this project from the podium perspective is the fact that we have a 49,000 square foot grocer. It's a very large footprint, very difficult to accommodate by any standards in any lot, but Crescent Heights has managed to assemble this entire block, and this allows us to fit within the ground floor, the grocer, as well as the lobby and loading areas, and what is necessary to be able to also access what is a very large multifamily building. And we have liner units that are hiding the parking garage, and they are they're important as part of the image of the building upon arrival to the building at the corner. And we have liner units in those 5 levels that you will see in the presentation. We have grocery parking on levels 2 to 4, and this is part of the component of parking that makes the podium what it is, and that we've done our best to conceal that parking, but it's essential for the existence of the grocery store, since many people do come with a cart in order to pick up groceries and load them up. With this, I'm going to begin the presentation. You see the location is at the entrance to fundamentally what is Midtown and Wynwood, and very important districts in the evolution of our city as a livable place. And its location gives it visibility at that very important corner with 29th. And you can see that there's a small street to the west of the site that is only 1 block long, and for obvious reasons of being a less important street, practically operating as if it was an alley, and not being a through street, is the logical place where we put all the services or deliveries for the building and the grocer. And with this gives you an orientation to this property. And you can see in this view the location of the tower at the corner, anchoring the corner of the entrance to this very up and coming, almost becoming established neighborhood. You can see on the roof a second pavilion, properly separated. That is our amenity pavilion. It's the clubhouse that we have facing a pool that faces the east and has view quarters between the buildings on the waterfront over to Biscayne Bay. There's a lot of greenery on this floor, on this level. There's quite a bit of landscaping that is part of the image. So when you look down from the building, it's a fifth facade that makes it a very interesting space to look at. Move on next, please. This is the most critical floor that we struggled for literally 2 years of work to get it resolved to the satisfaction of the grocers. As you know, grocers have very strict requirements for obvious reasons. They have to flow properly. They have to have their aisles. They have to function in a manner that is serving their customers the proper way, and that they can provide proper orientation. You can see here the escalators coming and jumbo elevators coming from parking right at the front, coinciding with the entrance at the corner, so that the arrival is always on the same side, and the front of the building is obviously facing Biscayne Boulevard with transparency and a very clear visibility into the store. And beyond that is the store with the service area in the back, of course. And you can see the entrance to the garage is pulled away from the corner from Biscayne Boulevard, and it rises to clear the passage to services to the core of the residential building, whose residential lobby is right at the corner of Biscayne Boulevard and 29. Next, please. You can see here the mezzanine. What is interesting about this grocer is that it has a cafe that people can go up the escalators or elevators after picking up a brown bag of goods to eat. And it has a terrace overlooking Biscayne Boulevard, which I think will add to animating the boulevard in a very nice way. This is a view of that mezzanine. You can see we have a double height lobby for the building, and it has some prominence at the corner that marks the arrival to the building. Next, please. Here you can see the rather complicated arrangement of ramps, because we have an arrival into the grocer to the right-hand side, and we have a peel-off in the other direction for rising to the residential parking. So it is a complex arrangement that, believe me, took us a long time to resolve. It was a rather complicated arrangement that we discussed with our traffic consultant, and we had the approval from the grocer, of course. Let's move on. And that happens still at another level where there's separate circulation for residents and grocers. They're actually, and grocery patrons, they're clearly separated. This is a requirement, of course, for the grocer who doesn't want their parking to be invaded by residents and possibly cause some complication and discomfort to their customers. And finally, you can see that we have residential uses on those levels, and here you can see the liner units that are hiding the base of the tower, and behind it, you can see the expanse of parking that, having been able to fit it in the few levels that you see, allowed us to get a very efficient and large floor plate, so we didn't have to consume the entire permitted height of the podium, and reaching only the 97 feet instead of the 123. If we continue up, you can see here the podium that you saw from the roof plan with the lounge, the fitness, the different fitness areas. Nima, the brand that Crescent Heights has very successfully branded in the world of multifamily, is known for the amount of amenities that they provide. This is an entire floor, as you can see, with many, many amenities serving these 588 units. It's almost like a village unto itself, but it's a beautiful place with lap pool and recreational pool and event space out in the garden with a tent that you see there. There's different areas for barbecues, and you can see the amenities are very generous. Let's next place, please. The pavilion is properly spaced 60 feet away from the tower, so it is a separate building that is not part of the podium calculation. It is another independent building with high ceiling. These are the levels, the typical levels. I'm not going to take you through every detail, but you can see there's a variety of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, studios. There's multiple unit types that are part of this design, and you can see the difficulty on the structure and how we created these 2 L shapes, because we couldn't have shear walls crossing through the grocer. Next. And here you can see at the roof, we also have another amenity that is overlooking, facing the bay and downtown. There's access to that level that is of an event, sort of a residence lounge event space that they can have up on the top. Of course, we have limits of square footages because of fire controls, but it's on that same level, not to continue the building taller, that we have our mechanical equipment on the other side of that interior garden that is sort of part of the view from the bar of this rooftop sky room that we are providing on top of the building. And next, please. You can see here the facade of the building, that how it is divided into 2 interlocking pieces that cascade in a geometric fashion from the roof, where you can see the expression of the roof amenity, and how it cascades down the facade all the way down to the entrance and of the building. It creates these series of rectangles that appear to trying to reach to each other. There's some tension between the movement of those rectangles as they cascade all the way down and integrate liners with the upper tower. The towers, those are all balconies, so there's a shadow line that marks these rectangular bands that are the feature of the building that gives it a graphic reading, almost like a geometric painting, which we thought it was appropriate entering Wynwood, where artists have done so much with the walls, and instead we try to create something that had that artistic value with the facade of the building as well. Next, please. This is the view from the corner of the grocer, the transparency of the ground floor that I mentioned, and the mezzanine balcony with a cafe overlooking Biscayne Boulevard, and everything above it is the portions of garage, which are comprised of 3 different zones. It's quite large, so that there's a glass zone where we have the glass monumental, very large elevators available for carts to enter within that dimension to go to the parking levels. The escalators are part of that glass atrium that you see there. To the left of the atrium, there's greenery that is part of the facade, and above it is a mural that would be part of the balance of where we no longer have the glass atrium because those are the residential floors. To the left, we ventilate the garage with louvers that create a design that simulates the geometry and the vocabulary of the tower beyond. On the right-hand side, sorry, on 30th. And you can see here, we can continue, you can see here the view from the corner. You see the transparency into the lobby, and you see the greenery, and under it, the trellis that forms that cafe below, and in the beginning of the pattern that becomes part of the design. Next, please. And these are some of the views, close-ups, and from afar. And it shows you some of the tonalities that we're using in the building, the bright, the portions that are clear glass versus tinted glass that help us highlight the forms in the building. This interlocking also occurs at the ends of the building, so it always looks like these 4 pieces that are trying to come together as part of a composition. Also, we have horizontal and vertical louvers that hide the parking and protect from the lights of the cars that are part of the expression of the northern facade of the garage in varying tones, as you can see from that is what is just a sampling of an image of the idea that we're trying to accomplish. And there are multiple types of glass that we use and tones in the paint to further highlight the shapes that make the design of the building. Next, please. These are some close-ups of the idea, the ideology that we're using for these different components in the design. Next. The mural is just a sample. We're going to use we're going to bring, the client would like to bring an artist to do something unique and fresh and new, even for any artist portfolio. But this gives you a general sense of the actual elevations and how they are translated into linear drawings, onto actual architectural drawings from those renderings. But you can see that it follows very much what you've seen in the renderings. Next, please. I hope this has given you a general sense of the building functionality and aesthetic values, and what our intent is for this rather important marker on the arrival to both Midtown and Wynwood. We feel that this building is bringing those neighborhoods out to the forefront of the most important historic avenue in Miami.
I'll call you back.
Thanks, Bernardo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
That concludes our presentation. Again, we have many people here on our side virtually, so we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Can you please put the ground floor plan again on the? Can you
Sure.
share that?
No problem.
In terms of context, are there traffic lights at the corner of Biscayne and 29th and 30th?
Yeah, it's mentioned on the Biscayne and 29th. You'll see that little marker there in the top right corner. It's a signalized intersection.
So on both?
And then there's a further signal 1 block west on 29th, I believe.
Yeah.
Do both the residents and the patrons to the supermarket access the garage at the same location?
Yes.
And the parking
They
will be
split
free
up.
for everybody?
They
Is there- it's a
split up on
segregated-
level 2. Excuse me? Didn't hear.
So if you're coming to the supermarket, Bernardo, and you're coming there maybe for the first time, probably the second time it'll be easier. But the first time and you get there to the second level, I guess there'll be a sign that tells you to go to the left
Yes.
or to the right. And if you're a
Correct.
resident, you know you have to go to the left. Is that basically the idea?
That is
And then-
correct. That is, you made the correct assumption, Willie. There's a wall in front of our arrival. You see where there's a signage indication that there will be a sign that clearly designates if you're going to the grocer, make a right. If you're going to residential, make a left.
Okay.
And that's where you split up and you follow your own path along the ramps on the west versus the east. There will be further internal digital signage that directs the customer to in which direction there is available parking for their use. With respect to the grocer, because obviously in the residential, those who are renting will have their own designated parking. Before you get to the controls, we have some spaces for grocer staff and for people coming to lease that you see there. And
Right.
then is the designated parking that you activate automatically to get into the rest of the parking.
Right, the controls is at the end of that aisle, and then from that point on, it will be restricted parking for the residents.
Correct. So the first parking spaces is because there's 11 spaces for potential tenants that come for meetings in the leasing office, which is in that floor. And so it's convenient for them, and they do not violate the security into the rest of the parking. And the other parking spaces are because grocers need some spaces for their management that they preferably not in the mainstream parking of the customer, and they're moved to the side, and they know that those are their spaces.
Okay. And the floors for the grocery parking are on the north side, or on the screen will be to the left.
Yes.
And if you have
Yes.
to go to the next level, then you go around and then take the other ramp right there. Okay, so
Exactly.
it's like two concentric ramps next to each other. One works for the grocery and the other works for the residential.
You got it. Exactly. You see?
Yeah.
And then when you arrive and you turn, there will be a digital sign that tells you that parking is full on the left. So it guides you to go to the right to go to the other level.
Okay. And with respect to the waivers, your strategy or your analysis is that second court is more of almost I don't want to use the word alley, but it's different. And in the other areas where you're intruding into that first layer, you're going to treat that with artwork of some nature. Is that kind of like a summary?
That's exactly. It's funny you use the word alley. That's the term we've kind of described second all along. It's almost like a rear, so to speak.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's totally accurate, Willie. It is what you described is correct. And actually, when you go visit, we thought it was an alley, but it's designated the street, but it actually functions as an alley, even for others. I mean, it's really a service street because it's one single block. It goes from nowhere to nowhere, except for us and another property that is also owned by Heights on the northeast corner, on the northwest corner.
I recognize the challenge that you have. I recall when we did a mixed use concept with a Publix in the Gables, integrated with apartments. It's that is your 1,000-pound gorilla, and so I congratulate you on how you've been able to kind of dissect the different requirements and address them in terms of the entrances and exits, et cetera. And can you show me again the part for the delivery, so that they're trucks which are typically pretty large? Okay. So
yeah.
Is that an opening there into the truck maneuvering, or are you going to have some sliding gates that close that off? I'm not reading it correctly though. I don't know.
It's curtain, but yeah, we have an opening there for the proper maneuvering of the trucks. What you see there is, because this is a zoning filing, it has the required sizes of, the square footages, but obviously we have tested the maneuvering of the large trucks, and I had to vet it actually with a grocer. You can imagine they have rather strict requirements for the sizes and maneuvering, and all that is taken into account, and that's the reason why we have that red zone is the area that opens the gates that would appear in that zone. But
those are gates that.
Not many of these,
Bernardo, will they actually close off? In elevation, can we see the elevation of that?
Sure.
Sherry, can you answer that?
Yeah, it's a sliding system. Sherry, if you could pull it up.
Yeah, I'm going to the 2D elevation. It's exactly what, it doesn't show perfectly, but it's intended to be sort of it's a sliding, almost like chain system that are in metal panels that open and close to adjust to accommodate the size of the truck and its maneuverability.
And do you has this grocer told you or given you an indication of typically their deliveries? Are there times of the day when there will definitely be no deliveries and that gate will be closed off, or are they going to be making deliveries in the wee hours of the morning or late at night? Do you have an idea as to how that's going to happen?
I think I'd have to ask my client that question. I don't think it's intended.
The vast majority of deliveries are during the nighttime.
Okay. Bernardo, just a comment and observation. I mean, I like the project a lot. I like your elevations more than I like the renderings. And that usually is not the case. But as I look at these two elevations, I love them. But for some reason, the rendering, it's not, I mean, I wish everything looks like this. I mean, this really looks, for me, but I don't know if the others have the same reaction, and maybe it's just the way that was done, but this looks very, very elegant. The in and out, the interplay, the kind of the interlocking of the two knuckles coming together and separating. Here it looks, but in the 3D, my reaction was not, I love this. The other was like kind of thumbs down. I mean, it's not, maybe it's just in the ways of this articulation, but just, I don't have any other comments. Members of the board.
Let me go ahead and, Bernardo, it's a great looking project. It's like Willie say, I'm also dealing with a grocer, and dealing with the requirement is a challenge, and I think you've done a fantastic job. I think the project looked great. I think it's going to be a great project for that area. So congratulations, and I mean, it's beautiful. Nothing wrong about it. Everything's great.
Thank you.
those of you who deal with grocers, I appreciate the comment because it's like a Rubik's Cube, right? It's like, wow, to resolve the requirements.
And usually they don't give you too many options, Bernardo. They have one way and it's their way, and you have to make it work. Otherwise, this is a major tenant, and this will be great for the entire neighborhood.
Starting with a column spacing, they have to make sure that their parking is a little bit different than the normal, and if you don't do it, they don't come.
Again, you haven't mentioned who it is, but if it's a Dean DeLuca or Belushi's, it would be great, because that's someone we've been trying to get down into Miami for the longest time. So I hope at some point we get to hear the gossip before it comes out on the Herald.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Robert, you they have oversized cars, oversized driveways. It's unbelievable. I know, you're absolutely right.
All right.
A question about, if I may, this is Anthony Zamzis. I don't know if you can hear me. What is the facade of the podium, or whatever you want to call it, as from the rear, from the elevation that we see now on our screen on the right? What is that material above the truck door?
It's the same as there. It's the same as on the side. The same design appears on the north and the west facades. Correct, above the grocer, which is glass, on the street, on the secondary, which in fact continues with glass for a long portion of the facade, and then wraps around in the back in the same manner. So there is a unity of the design. From that corner, you will see that it's together, and it is. But it's just. Why don't you show him the facade on the alley, Sherry?
What are you facing? What are you facing across the alley? What is the building across the alley?
There's only, right. It's a property by the same owner, Crescent Heights.
Okay.
That is undeveloped. And then the way at the corner, there's one building. Why don't you show them the context? There's a small building and an alley and another alley that intersect. That is a service area there's a synagogue and there's a small building.
Yeah, this just exactly.
Crescent Heights owns everything you see there except that little cluster in the corner. They own that whole edge. So where the trucks coming in and out are in front of their own property. And there's an alley behind those three buildings that is also the backside and service area of those three buildings.
And if we can add, the neighbors in those two buildings came out in support of our alley closure and redesign and redevelopment of the areas. Russell maintains a very good relationship with them, and we received written comments of support for the redevelopment of these two blocks.
Yes, and when we actually build on this pad, it will have a remarkably similar parking garage that would have the same facade on it. So it'd be one parking garage facing another parking garage with the same facade.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have one comment. This is Lee Labrada. Thank you again for the presentation, for walking us through this. As far as the front facade, this green wall, can you tell me a little bit about the treatment? Because in theory, it's beautiful, but what do we have behind this green wall? Is it natural? Is it faux? And as it matures, as that green wall kind of grows in, what do we have to look forward to?
We would develop appropriate specs for that green wall. Obviously, we rather use natives and plants that don't require much irrigation. As you know, there are many plants in the tropics that live off the humidity of the air. Mm-hmm. And we have our landscape department has been looking at how to use green walls that, in green roofs, in fact, in the tropical environment. Actually, they're quite more successful in the tropical environment than in other neighborhoods where, in other places in the country where they're more a dream than reality. And but the present intent is to make this wall a real green wall.
And the reason I bring that up, and just as an example, there is a grocer on the beach that I think had a similar idea to have this like green monument, and it never really kind of came together. So I don't know if it was a matter of irrigation or whatnot, but it's obviously, again, in theory and is a design intent, I think it's beautiful. It's a really nice treatment, but I was just, curious, and I think it's important to really detail that with the proper plantings so that you don't have the.
I do have to tell you, thank you for asking this. I do have to tell you that on this particular case, even though we do show you a green wall, we've been having conversations because we have a shelf from which plants can grow. As you can see, we have a place where we could put a planter, and actually, if one is willing to wait a year, you could have some climbing vines on that wall, possibly within a relatively short period of time, and have not necessitate an actual green wall the way the world thinks of it. It is not that tall. I have vines in my house that grow way up there, 3 stories, and they have grown really rather quickly here in Florida. And it is not out of the question that if there is a concern on the part of the developer that the maintenance or the viability of a classic green wall that maybe we do it with a planter and make sure that we have early planting of some lower plants plus vines. But the current drawing shows the green wall because we would like to have that zone in green wall, and so would our client in terms of the message about the building, and so would an organic grocer. This is it has a lot of messaging associated with greenery, particularly in the middle of an urban environment. This is a very nice idea.
We placed it on the eastern wall to ensure that it would get sunlight. And the one on the beach that I'm aware of, or the one on First Street, fails because there is no sunlight on the north side of the buildings. And that's why they failed.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a very good point. And because that is essential to have the sun hitting it at least a certain number of hours a day.
Right.
Thank you.
I have a couple of comments. First of all, this is a beautiful building, and I commend you for the design and the way you have created different volumes and the way you treated it. If you can go back to the site plan, please. I think you mentioned that the ground floor plan. That the cafe was in the mezzanine, but I see some tables and canopies on the sidewalk. Is the cafe in the bottom or on the mezzanine?
No, the cafe is a mezzanine. What you see down there is bicycle racks.
Oh, so
we have to assume.
Right, the sidewalk is not being used. The sidewalk is not being used for dining.
No.
Right?
As of now, from what I've heard from the operator, they were not planning to. Russell, do you have a comment on that?
Yes, they did not want to occupy the ground floor sidewalk. They want to occupy the second floor, but the mezzanine does have an outdoor seating area as well.
Now, you show storefront facing Biscayne all the way through.
Yes.
Yes.
So it'll be open to.
Yes.
But you only show one entrance on the corner of Northeast 30th, correct?
That's right.
Correct.
That's where the main entrance.
Right.
Yes,
I
because
think
they need to have a controlled entrance. That's right.
I think
It
that
may be more than 2 doors. It could be 4. We
Yeah, no,
we
I-
don't have that. They're working their interior plans at this time.
that was going to be my comment. I think you have really emphasized all the corners, coming in, and I think the residential portion does come in and it helps. I think that this corner for the grocery can be set back just to that red line, and it gives you a better entry for the grocery. But it doesn't impact your building at all. I think it could be an improvement if you set back that and put more doors there. I think there's going to be some pedestrian activity here, not only from the parking area, but from people coming and walking to the store.
We do have a good setback there, and we'll certainly study that and take it under advisement. We would obviously have to get the permission of the tenant to do that, but we will certainly study it.
Yeah, I think the opportunity is there, but it's a very nice building.
Thank you very much, Fidel.
Right.
Any other comments from the board? Robin?
Yeah, no, I think Bernardo and Arquitectonica's, working with the equation of a single grocer, it makes it a lot easier to work out the issues than dealing with multiple tenants stacked retail. And, the splitting of the parking to the allocated grocery versus mixing residential or other uses. So all of that's resolved very well. One minor detail, just looking at the plan that's on the screen now, I see in the loading area, there's 2 spaces that say 420 square foot dock, and it appears to be a ramp, a pedestrian ramp going down from the man door. Is that a dock height receiving area? Between
just north of the 420 right there. I think that's a trash compactor or some other.
No, that's a trash compactor, but then this appears to be a ramp from.
Yes, Chair, to explain to them on this, or Ken.
Yeah, so at the moment, Robin, this is showing a ramp just based on having the conversations with the grocer as to whether or not we're going to come in and then sink the trucks and give them, a level dock up here. Let's say that would be at the height of the grocer. So whether we're sloping the trucks or whether we're going to ramp within, we haven't had that level of detail with them just yet.
Yeah,
but we've done sections for both. So depending on how they want us to accommodate them.
So to simplify, right now, let's just say that the retail grocery is at grade. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So is the truck maneuvering area, is that going to be recessed ramped when you get in there, or is it at grade also?
It's grade.
It's also at grade.
It's at grade. So
as currently contemplated.
Right. The only other issue is that by the first, actually the middle 420 square foot dock, there seems to be a column right at the entry to the overhead door that may be hindering actual maneuvering of loading and unloading of that particular space. But again, those are details that I'm sure you'll resolve.
Yeah, actually, they've done their own truck maneuvering design. And we're just reflecting what we received from them, and they seem to be comfortable with the way things are. And I think that little rectangle that you mentioned there, it could be that that's a sidewalk and the dock is angling and settling down, or is that up to the loading dock height, and then they have a second ramp that brings things down into their storage. They are working on that interior arrangement as we speak, and their own set of drawings is unto itself a very complicated set of drawings, and they're taking care of that. But they are satisfied with the amount of space that we provided, and they tested it, and they seem to be pleased with the conditions that you see in this drawing, which is why we dared to show it. You know,
Right.
we didn't want to take a risk, obviously.
No, I agree, Bernardo, that, you know, dealing with a single tenant, they're going to be very thorough from their own standpoint and, you know,
Correct.
resolve it. And globally, you put together the organization of the parking, the relationship of the parking to the retailer and to the residential quite well, and, you know, addresses these type of tenants' major concerns when they go into mixed-use projects. So, like I said, the overall design and what have you is, once again, very exceptional, the quality of work that one has come to expect from Architectonics. So I congratulate you all. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate all of you who have had experience with these kind of tenants. Mr. Galbert and us, he can attest to it. He's been part of all those meetings with the grocer, and we've been through it, right, Russell?
Sure. Thank you, Robin, for your comments.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I have a quick question, if I may. The residential deliveries, are they at the upper floor?
No. The residential deliveries, if we go back, are to the over there at the other end.
Oh, at the other end.
They accepted the shared maneuvering, and that they pulled their trucks to the left, and that the residents pulled their trucks to the right. And that was part of the big discussion with him, as you can imagine. Mr. Galbert and our team had to explain to them that there's some needs also for the tower, you know, so they do deliver from that end, and we deliver to ourselves on the south side, and they deliver to the left, and there's all kinds of drawings of the maneuvering of the trucks for each one, and there's a coordinated timing for deliveries and so forth, and that is what is expected as part of the agreement with a grocer and as part of the operating side of Crescent Heights for a NEMA project.
Okay.
If there's
One
no more comments,
last question. I noticed on the residential tower, those, if I may call them, the brise soleil partitions, you know, that the geometric horizontal and vertical fins. They defined balconies, but there is more than one unit with that area. Is that correct? So will you have additional partitions between?
Yeah, but those are thin. They are thin dividers in metal or glass that are gray, and they are set back from the edge of the rail, while the ones that form the design are forward of the rail.
Correct.
And they're thicker concrete. So there's a contrast. But if you look at the detail close up, if you look in there, there are some additional partitions, of course.
What is
always the...
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead, continue, please. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Problem.
No.
We strategically picked the white verticals that are solid between units. This was a matrix that we did to make sure that they were in the right position with respect to the units.
Somewhere on the top floor of the podium or something, I don't know, it's the 6th, 7th, 8th level, there is a double height. What is that space? Yeah, there.
All right. It's about 1.5 levels, and there's the amenity floor, but we also need it a little bit taller because we collect plumbing from the upper levels on that floor. So we try to camouflage it with the pattern, of course, but that is that floor that you see in the drawings. That is the amenity floor, which has a higher ceiling. It's not exactly 2 stories. It's about 1.5 levels or so. But it is a taller ceiling than the typical residential floor. You're noticed correctly.
Okay. Thank you.
If there's no more comments from everybody but staff, from the board, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, so it's a motion by Mr. Behar. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fidel Perez. Are there any comments on the motion?
Not from me.
If there being none, Vicky, can you call the roll?
Yes. Okay, so there's a motion to approve as is. Mr.
Yes.
Robert Behar,
Yes.
Mr. Fidel Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Romero,
Yes.
Mr. Bosco,
Yes.
Mr. Sanchez,
Yes.
and Ms. Labrada.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Bernardo.
Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you all. Vicky, we have one more item?
Yes, we do. We actually have 2 more items, but one more item to listen to. Okay, anybody who needs to be upgraded to this meeting, please raise your hand. Iris, you're already in. Is there anyone else?
Are we keeping Mr. Wasserman on or removing?
No, I will remove him. Okay, we have item number 3, file ID 8043. It's a resolution recommending to the Director of the Planning Department approval or denial of the project, also known as Downtown First, located at 22, 30, and 34 Southwest 1st Street, 35, 25, and 19 Southwest 2nd Street, and 112 South Miami Avenue. The subject parcel is zoned T680. It is located within the Net District downtown Brickell, and it is a multifamily residential, office, and retail. Okay, now I'm going to read the waivers that are being requested. There are 7 waivers in total. The first one is a waiver requested pursuant to Article 7, Section 7.1.2.5A10 to permit substitution of 1 industrial loading berth for 2 commercial loading berths. Number 2, waiver requested pursuant to Article 7, Section 7.1.2.5A.29 to permit up to 10% reduction in the drive aisle width from 23 to 22 feet. 3, waiver pursuant to Article 5, Section 5.6.1.g to permit a reduction of the frontage setbacks along the 8-story upper level setbacks for lots having one dimension of 100 feet or less. 4, waiver pursuant to Article 5, Section 5.6.1.h to permit a reduction of the side setbacks above the 8-story upper level setbacks for lots having one dimension of 100 feet or less. 5, waiver requested pursuant to Article 7, Section 7.1.2.5A 19.19 to permit parking to encroach into the second layer above the first story along the secondary frontage with art and glass treatment approved by the planning director. 6, waiver requested pursuant to Article 7, Section 7.1.2.5.A.29 to permit a 10% increase in the maximum lot coverage. And 7, the last one, a waiver pursuant to Article 7, Section 7.1.2.5.A14 of Miami 21 to allow vehicular entries for loading docks and service areas from the principal frontage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Iris Escarin Carlos Diaz with offices at 333 Southeast 2nd Avenue. Again, thank you for your time this afternoon. It's so important, everything that you guys do by agreeing to meet digitally that allows projects to continue forward. So I appreciate your time and As we all have adapted and I've become tech savvy since March on all these apps, I appreciate your patience and time. With that said, I'd like to present to you a new project by the Mello Group. It's in downtown. It's actually almost like in the backside of the courthouse. Many of you have probably parked there at one time. It's been a surface lot for many, many years. And it's actually quite exciting to be actually bringing a residential use to this area, because it's actually going to create a great opportunity to have eyes on the street, movement. It's right next to a tiny little office building and some other restaurants that are actually very receptive to the idea of having more residents on this side of First Street. With that said, I'd like to walk you through the presentation. Arturo Griego, our architect, will be walking you through the actual plans, but I'd like to walk you through the application. So the property is zone T680. It's in the Central Business District. It's right in between First Street and the I-95 ramps. So I-95, this is where it actually starts to either go in and up when you go around that loop from South Miami Avenue. This is your loop in, as well as when you're coming down. And the importance of that is when we met with the city with regards to the building and its frontages, even though I-95 could be considered a rear, the city really wanted us to treat it as a frontage. So it's a secondary frontage for our purposes. And one of the waivers that we're asking for is to have access off the primary, which is Southwest First Street, which is our only vehicular access point. So we're asking for that for our loading access, to be able to be accessed off a primary. And this is approximately 6 lots, but they have a little bit of an odd configuration, one of them being even less than 100 feet. Next slide. So the parameters, the general development parameters of the site are, our lot area is 24,000 square feet. Our FLR is 743,000. We are providing 560 residential units. We have commercial on the ground floor of approximately 3,000, and we have a liner of the parking with 12,900 square feet of office, and we're 51 stories. The requested waivers, we have 3 that are related to the building and 4 that are related to the parking. The waivers, as delineated by Vicky, are really to address the frontages and the configuration. We have a measurement of the site that's less than 100. We're providing 13% open space, which is more open space than required. But at the same time, we're asking for a lot coverage increase by less than 10% of an increase of 6.25% with regards to the building's placement. In addition to that, the maneuverability of the parking on a site such as this is one that we had to request certain waivers. The reduction of the driveway width from 23 feet to 21 feet. The loading berth substitution in order, since loading has to be completely internalized to be able to have that, we requested to reduce the size of the loading berth with regards to the parking. And then on the frontage that is towards the I-95. So the frontage towards First Street, that one's fully lined. However, the frontage towards the I-95, we are asking to treat it with that articulation that Arturo is going to walk you through with regards to the art pieces that are going down forth, as well as with the vegetation that's being proposed there. With that said, this kind of gives you the parameters of the waivers that we're asking for with regards to the lot coverage, as well as the previous one with regards to the 100 feet and the position of the building within the site. I'd like to pass it over to, I'm sorry, and this is one last slide. This is the ones regarding.
Iris, you're going through those slides pretty quickly. It's almost impossible to read them. Okay. I don't know if the others.
I can go back to one more. So with this one, this is the upper level setback one with regards to the setbacks for the tower. Because we have one dimension of the site that's 100 feet or less, we're asking to reduce one of the setbacks slightly. The lot coverage waiver, this is one that we're asking for. Rather than the 80% lot coverage that's typically required, we're asking to go to 86%. So we're asking for a 6.25 increase to that. And then these are all the parking waivers collectively. So with regards to the parking, we have the driveway width that we're asking to go from 23 to 21. We're asking for a loading berth substitution. we're asking for the waiver that allows the secondary frontage to be in the second layer, and that's towards I-95. Towards the street, it's completely lined, but towards I-95, we do have parking in the second layer in the second story. And then the last waiver that we're asking for is to have our loading access off the street frontage, because it's truly our only street frontage is on First Street. Our back towards I-85 is treated as a frontage because the city felt that it was very important that even though we didn't have vehicular access back there, that I-95 is an important entry in and out from downtown. So we treated that as a frontage.
So that's where the loading access issue is?
The loading access is off of First Street. We're asking to have the loading off of First Street, which typically in Miami 21, if you have a secondary front, the loading is supposed to come from the secondary. But we really don't have vehicular access off the back because it's the I-95 ramp. It's actually a little elevated on the back. So we had to move it to the front. And that concludes the presentations of the waivers. And I can pass it on to Nino to start with the presentation of the architecture.
Hello, and guys, thank you for your time. Glad to be here virtually. We prepared a quick 2-minute video with some elevator music, but it does a good job of showing the site and the location. And then we'll go into the floor plans and some of the details about the building. I'm going to share my screen here. We're just passing the site as we go right here towards the corner. I'll use the cursor to highlight where the site is. As I mentioned, we just passed it and the Metro Mover station is right there on the right. This is the site and this is the ramp on the backside, which is where Iris was saying we have no vehicular access. Views to the west and southwest. So we really are up against the highway. We have sort of an interesting situation where we have two interior sides, the downtown side, and then the highway side. It's kind of semi-industrial feel with the highway and with the FedEx building there. This is the site right here. And we're sandwiched between two buildings as well. The site is kind of downtown, typical Miami classic site. It hasn't been activated, hasn't been any new development really in the immediate vicinity here. So it's kind of nice to bring the activation on the street side, address the public side or the highway side with the treatment that we'll go through in a minute. And at the end of this video, we also have location. We've placed the building in it so that we can kind of see it in motion as well, and you can get a feel for the building in context. And I think it does a good job of really placing it there. Again, this is the site right here between these two buildings. Now, since we have vastly different sides or frontages of the building, and I think what's one of the unique aspects of the site also is how you experience it. You can experience it from a car view, almost like this, going really fast. You can experience it from a pedestrian view, going slow, and from a distance, coming into downtown. So those are some of the important aspects. And we're looking at the design, trying to develop sort of an idea of how we could articulate the facade and address some of the issues. Again, this is the First Street side. This is the highway I-95 expressway. This is the site plan with the tower, and we have a pool on both sides as we have to respect the setbacks, the upper level setbacks. We have a very modest service retail on the ground level and almost an equal size residential lobby, and then a single access, as Iris mentioned, for loading and for residential parking. We are adding some landscaping and some activation, as we mentioned, to the ground level in an area that really needs it. The parking garage circulates, through the ramp all the way up, and it's lined on the pedestrian side or the north side with office levels all the way up. I think there's 6 office levels, 6 kind of a story and a half office level, double height office levels facing the street. And on the rear, we're treating it with landscaping facade. We have a pool deck and recreation level on top of the parking garage. And then that's where the tower starts to set off. The 2 sides, interior sides, are treated with the same concept as the I-95 side, which is really sort of an abstraction of the elevations of the balcony facade movements that you can kind of see from the ground level as the building goes up, and we'll see on a couple slides later. But bringing that and kind of making it your facade wall and an artistic wall on the east and west side, and then on the south side with landscape screening, as we've done previously in other projects. The colors of the building are a combination of white on the east and west facade, tinted dark glass and dark mullions, I think, to give it some sort of an more elegant feel to it, trying to eliminate some of the issues that were mentioned earlier in terms of colors fading and whatnot. So when you see the facade and elevation, I think we have, on the east side, which is going to get a lot of sun, you're going to have the facade painted a light color, white color, where the glass gives it the contrast where it's going to be tinted gray, as well as the mullions and the framework would be gray. As mentioned, sort of the artistic, almost Wynwood-esque color to the east and west side of the building, and then it kind of wraps the corner, and then on the south becomes more of a landscape screening element, but in the same pattern. As mentioned earlier, I think if I just flip through these kind of quickly, you'll see what's going on with the balconies and how it starts to define the edge of the building. And in these diagrams, you can also see that, from different vantage points, it's going to have some visual interest as you move up through the tower, and then eventually culminating at sort of where the tower meets the sky there, kind of to have these more continuous balconies, more shadow, so that there becomes more of a floating element up there at the top, I believe. And that concludes the presentation on the architecture.
With that, that concludes our presentation, and we're open for any questions you may have.
Thank you. If you don't mind, if I can jump in. Iris, I think you had mentioned that the city had made a comment about using the side of the I-95 ramp as like a main facade. And I have to say, in the presentation and the walkthrough that Arturo just gave, I was surprised at the orientation, only because it seems like you would have a lot more pedestrian traffic on the opposite side where you have the parking entrance, as opposed to, the side of the street where you have a, main ramp to an expressway. So I wasn't really sure.
Well, our primary is on 3rd Street, right? And that's the one that we have the office liner on. That's the primary street. However, on the back side, it's a secondary frontage for purposes of articulation. They wanted us to make sure that it wasn't like a side that you could leave with a bare wall. They wanted us to treat it and give it some activation. So because you're going to see it from the ramp. You're going to, at the ground level, you don't see it because the ramp is a little high there. And there's actually no pedestrian connection back there, or no vehicular entrance either. But they did want us to treat the garage with something that looked nice. So that's why we ended up treating what would have been a rear. If it wasn't a frontage, it would have been a rear and could have been just a solid wall.
Okay, then I think I just have the orientation of the building. If you don't mind pulling up the floor plan real quick and just.
Yes, please, Nino.
Yes. So Southwest 1st Street.
That's the side that has the office. So Southwest 1st Street has the office liner.
I thought it was the other way.
On the back, right. Okay. On the 2 sides, they're doing the art piece that looks like the same sort of crackling, that movement from the balconies that comes down with the color. Because even though today somebody else can come and build at 0, one side is an MPA garage that they put it out for RFP, I don't know how many times, and then it's never come to fruition with a redevelopment. And then on the other side, but it could be redeveloped in the future. And then on the other side, we have a small office building that I think is a condo. So I'm not sure if that will ever be redeveloped, but it might be. So that's why we really treated all four sides. One completely lined, two with the art piece, and then the other one that has the greenery coverage.
Thank you. I misunderstood the orientation.
Sorry.
No pedestrian in the back or vehicular access, really.
Yeah.
Thank you.
On that drawing that we have, Iris, what are the elements there in the two corners?
I'm sorry, Willie, I couldn't hear you.
What are the elements on the two corners?
Two corners.
There.
Here?
Yes.
Oh, here, down below, that's a mechanical equipment down below on the roof of the parking garage.
Are those compressor units?
Yes.
And they're at what level?
I guess the roof of the 8th level.
Can you take me to the amenity level? So those are the compressor units there, the two ends?
That's correct. Service access here and here.
And that's for the entire building, or you have another setup on the roof?
No, there's more equipment up on the roof, up at the upper roof.
So you have two swimming pools? Is that what you're doing? One on the east and one on the west?
That's correct.
And don't you have buildings next to them?
I believe this building is lower right now. Well, the building on the north is definitely on the east is definitely lower. I believe both are lower than where we're at.
Today we don't. In the future we may, but today we don't. And they also have the same podium height limitation that we do.
And we maximize the height here, I believe.
Yeah. But if you show him maybe a section, he could see where that level is. Or one of the renderings might show it.
I mean, it just seems that from a simple site planning perspective, if this was a test in architecture, you'd have a tough time passing it. The only place where you're forever guaranteed to have some sunlight is actually coming from the expressway or from the street frontage on the other side. You could end up having buildings just as tall as yours on either side.
Right. I think one of the renderings with the highway would be good, you know.
I mean, I'm having, Iris, a hard time getting excited over this project with all the waivers that it's getting and the architecture just not being up to par for such a, I mean, if we were doing a two-story building, I'd be more forgiving. But, you know, I just have issues with what I have here before me.
Well, the project that's
I'd rather hear from other members of the board. Maybe
I have a couple of questions.
They can give some highlight that'll persuade me to think differently here.
Can you go back to the ground floor, please?
Sure.
What do you have under the I-95 ramp right now? Well, is it a parking or is it empty?
The existing is just a parking lot.
Parking under the ramp?
No, if you could scroll up a little, so they can see the bottom. I think he's trying to see what is the space, what's happening in that space there.
This
right?
space
There's a 10-foot.
Yeah, I think the ramp is low enough that there's nothing there. It's just fill, I believe.
Yeah, it's Mr. Perez, it's supposedly going to be almost like an open space dog run facility for the people in the building.
And that's the property of the state, right? I-95?
This right here.
Oh, no, the I-95 is a state ramp. That's the current condition there. We are then set back from the property line 10 feet. And we're creating an additional little buffer there. But that's the current condition.
Okay, right.
So it almost goes from grade to about, I don't know, 6 feet here maybe.
Okay. Can you go back to the floor plan again, please?
Yes.
So actually, you coming in for your parking structure and for your loading area through one same place, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
We have 144 feet frontage, so for building, that's not that much, but you know, with the limited retail and limited office, I think everybody is like everybody who parks there is assigned parking. It's not, I don't think it's going to be a heavily trafficked area from people who don't know the building.
Yeah, I think that this first floor should have been taken back and made the sidewalk a lot larger than what it is, and have the opportunity to.
Well, it is hardscaped. It's got a setback, and it is hardscaped for those 10 feet.
No, I understand, but I think that you have made like a box as the podium that if you set back the first floor,
right?
I mean, you have a canopy, I think, right? This white.
Right. There's an existing sidewalk of 12.3 feet in the right of way. Then we have our 10-foot setback before the building.
Okay.
So it's going to be a big sidewalk back there. And it's matching kind of, we're further set back than some of our neighbors. The smaller buildings are right on the 12 line, but we have the 10-foot setback, so we're further set back with regards to the project. It's a rental building, and it's something that's much needed in the community, especially in this particular area. We have a lot of employees at the courthouse, a lot of near the Bright Line, near other businesses, offices that are down here. So from a perspective of need, it's something that the developer who has created a niche for being able to find the right mix of rental units for different areas. This was something that they felt was warranted for this particular area. They have another rental project that's closer on the river on Flagler. And this is actually trying to anchor and activate those two ends when there's a sea of parking in between that's under the I-95 ramping system. So this was part of their concept.
Okay, can you go to the amenity level? I think that going back to what Willie mentioned, if you turn this building around and put the pool towards the west, you'll be looking over I-95, and because you're up there on the 8th level, and I think the opportunity of having a better area up there. I'll go to the floor plan.
Here you can see.
On this rendering, you can see where the pools. Oh.
Right. What I'm saying, if you push the rendering up, if you take this tower and turn it around, instead of facing east-west, you face it north-south, you will have some space to put your amenity, your pool facing I-95. Well, that ramp that you mentioned. And I think that, I'm not sure, is that the west or that's the south?
We're looking at the south here.
So be a south exposure.
So this is southern exposure here, yes.
You have a lot more space facing, turning the tower around. and only one pool area.
I think that some of the things that drove the tower placement were the setbacks that were allowed on the site.
The setbacks basically are the same because you have the podium and then you have the tower on top. So basically, I think it's basically the same. I don't know. It's just a thought, you know.
Yeah, it's a rectangular lot, so this is the long dimension.
You know, I really don't know two pools and you know, doesn't make any sense. And then, you know, if you do have all the buildings coming along, you will have no exposure for sun. You know, I think that the building could be broken more in the top to make a nicer top. Even though I know you continue the balconies, but you know, I don't really know if it's going to show at all. But those are my comments.
This is Robin. I have a question about those compressors on the amenity deck. What are they actually servicing?
Well, they usually serve, because of the limitations in the runs, they're going to service the areas like the office and retail and stuff below, and the tower would be serviced by the equipment above on the roof to come down.
I mean, what are the ramifications of eliminating those there and putting, you know, the elements on the main roof to service the lower and allowing those amenity decks to go, you know, through lot, so to speak, on each side?
Well, it goes into the building systems. We'd have to change because of the way they're cooling the spaces that have these condensers. They'd have to go into a cooling tower or some other system. Obviously below, we have the offices all the way down to the ground, and then the retail and the parking within that garage. So we don't really have a well ventilated space or even any space to place this amount.
Yeah, but couldn't that be accommodated with a separate condenser water, not a chilled water system that would just have a supply and return line running down to your base components, the offices and, you know, what have you at the ground level, and putting to better use that pedestal rooftop there for amenities and open space and the compressor farms you've established there?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, it's something to work with the engineer for sure to see another solution. And the owner.
Is Robert still there, or?
I do. Let me go ahead. On that basis, on the equipment, before I get to my comments, on that basis, on the equipment, on that level, how tall is this building?
That podium is about 123 feet.
But no, the overall building.
51 stories.
So there's no question that this building has to have a cooling tower on top of the roof to serve the units. You know, there's no, you know, it's one equipment on top. And I agree with my colleague. It is absurd to put those equipment on that to serve the offices when you already have a cooling tower, or perhaps you have a smaller tower to provide what Robin was saying about for the system and the office component. So I think that, to me, it will make a lot more sense. But let me get to my point. And you are seeking setback reduction for the tower on the above the 8th floor for the north and south, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
On the north, wait, I apologize. On the north and south, because the right of ways are over 70 feet, they're allowed to go straight up. Where the setbacks that we're asking for is on the sides, and that was to really increase the balconies. One of the things that they tried to do here was play with the balconies on the two sides. So there's portions of the balconies that we reduced the setback to make the balcony bigger. And that's to create that playfulness that they were trying to accomplish as they go towards the top. And then the floors, and here's where you can see the setbacks that we're asking for. It's really only for the balconies, which kind of explains that playfulness that they're trying to do.
But on and I'm gonna get to the point that Fidel was trying to make on the pool. You're pushing the building towards to the south on the I-95. You're saying that you only require 10-foot setback there?
Right. Yeah. Because we have a right of way that's greater than 70 feet in front of us.
But I thought you said that's not a right of way. That's that was a.
No, I-95 is a right of way. That's why zoning had us put it as a secondary front.
Okay. I think this is a site that we're really trying to pack as much as you can, and it's resulting. And whether I agree with the location of the poles, I would not have done that. And I think Fidel, was going in a direction that to me made sense, where the pool on the south side really was, it's the way to go. I think that from the building orientation, it made a lot more sense to do it in the back. I know that you only have you have to be separated from the east and west because you have 27-foot reduction, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Because I unfortunately I didn't get a set of plans. This on my Dropbox, I couldn't go into the details. But I think that we're trying to put a lot into this site. I think we're getting a not the best building that we could potentially get here. I like the effort, and I don't have a problem with the setback reduction for the balcony. At least it gives me a movement, but I'm really not in favor. I mean, I do have a lot of problem with trying to maximize the envelope and to the fullest, I'm not getting what I think it should be, the right product here. I'm not sure I could really support this project. Those are my comments.
I think that one of the things that I wanted to reiterate with regards to the building and the massing and the size, zoning kind of gives you those parameters with regards to what you can build and so forth, with regards to units, square feet. This developer feels that because they do rental communities all over the city, that parking is required. Where you saw earlier another project, another developer, where they said that parking wasn't required for their product. Here, we're providing 450 free parking spaces because they have a market where they rent their buildings out relatively soon, and they've tried to study the users that they have and the young professionals that they have renting in their buildings. Now, that is the premise of what the program is. The architecture, they've really made an effort in this building to try to create that playfulness with regards to the balconies, as well as at the top 5 floors, I believe, create like a band around the building to try to create, and I don't know if Nino went into that, to try to create kind of like an emphasis on the top that where the playfulness kind of unites and so forth with regards to the architecture design of the building. So they've really made a stride to kind of move forward from some of their previous architecture and design in this building, as well as lining the garage on all sides with different components that activate and kept it looking fresh.
Iris, as you said, this playfulness that you're addressing, I don't think really moves the needle. Just to me, just the contrary. I think there's some integral mistakes here that were never resolved in the site planning, the access, the frontage of the property. the placement of the tower on the pedestal. So I don't think anybody here is making a comment regarding the parking. I just have issues in granting waivers on something where the final result, I don't see a single benefit to the city or to the adjacent community in what is being done. So I have a real problem with this. Let's see if anybody else has other comments that hasn't spoken. Because we do have one short item after this applicant, which has to do with our calendar for next year. Any other comments?
I just realized I had myself muted. I have similar reservations about this building. Already expressed. I don't want to add any more. I have a sort of like, and forgive me for saying this, Iris and the architect, but I have a bitter impression or feeling or whatever you want to call it. The last time you guys showed up on our board, we turned you down. We disapproved your building. And that a couple of months later, I read in the paper, you had a beautiful picture too, Iris, that the building was approved. So, I don't know. I mean, how do you think I feel about it? So whatever we say and we do, you get the building approved afterwards? I don't know.
Well,
do you know what I'm talking about?
That planning director is no longer going to be there.
So do you know what I'm talking about?
I am aware of what you're.
Listens to our recommendations.
Through the chair, I just would like to remind the board that you guys are just here to provide recommendations.
Yes.
And or approval based on what's being presented. So.
Okay.
Stick to this.
Mr. Romeo, I'm sorry for interrupting. I believe the meeting is scheduled to end at 5 or 5:15. I'm not sure if it will drop us or not. I have been advised by IT to create an additional webinar just in case that is the situation. So I want to let everybody know if that's what happens, I will send out another link so everybody can sign back on.
Right.
I apologize.
Let's try to see if we can at least, I know we have also the item of the, calendar.
Correct.
If I can also just quickly respond,
Besides,
it is a
Iris, if I can, let me just finish because I want to make sure you guys made your presentation. I just want to make sure that every one of our members gets an opportunity to speak. Is there anyone that hasn't? Anthony, are you done with your comments or you had?
Yeah, well, I feel the same way. I feel the building is excessive. I feel the building is monolithic. I feel it's too much. I just, I don't know what else I can say. I mean, we see this type of work before. We have seen this type of work before. We turned it down, then it gets approved. Okay. So I don't know what to say.
If you would allow, Carlos Mello can respond to some of those questions that you have.
Iris, we're going to be cut off here in a few minutes. I really want to make sure that every member of the board has spoken. You guys had your chance for your presentation. And unless a member of the board has a question, the appropriate thing is let's make sure that we finish our side. I just want to make sure whether I've lost count at this point, whether Robin or maybe Ligia, did you all speak or do you have anything else left to say?
This is Robin. I had made a comment about the compressor locations on that, amenity deck level. But to sum up, my concerns, I agree with the general dialogue that really the building on this site should be orientated with its primary facades facing south and north and held towards the street. And that should be the design parameters that the architect works with, to provide the large open amenity to stay that way facing the south, the turnpike entrance. So that would be my
correct, Robin. I mean, if they were to do that, the pool would be immediately in the correct place.
Right.
They would never have to worry about what happens immediately to the east or the west, and the building would be well designed forever and ever and ever. And that never happened here.
Right. Exactly.
So, Ligia, do you have any Any comments?
None further that haven't been already addressed.
Okay. If there are no other further comments, is there a motion from the board?
This is Robin. I would make a motion for, I guess, denial based on the orientation of the building as presented, and that the architect or developer should come back with the building that addresses the orientation issues we've discussed.
A second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any comments on the motion? And at this point, I do want to allow, if we don't have any other comments before we vote, an opportunity for the applicant to make a comment. I know Iris wanted to have the applicant an opportunity, and we'd like to give them the opportunity to, before we vote on this. Iris, is something you'd like to say before we vote? Or Mr. Mello?
I don't know if he still wants to make a comment or not. I'm not sure if he's still, I think he's still on. Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
This is Carlos Melo, the developer, and actually part of the design too. I'm an architect too. I was in this business from, I started when I was 17 years old. I'm 50 years old. We built 6,000 units in Miami. 5,000 of those are rentals that we still keep. I think that we have a successful business. I feel that this building is a very great product for the market where we are focusing. I think that if you compare this building with so many others that even though part of the board design before is at the same level, or some of it is better than that, I think that it has a good movement. I think that it's well located. The pools are where they have to be because one side is bigger than the other side. And I don't know really what you say that is incorrect in this building. Looks good. Is that what the market demands? I don't know. I don't see really what's the problem here. Why you say that is the location is the orientation is incorrect? I don't understand that point.
Yes, Mr. Mello, we can see that you don't understand that point, and that's really what has us at this juncture. And typically when we voted project, we give a denial vote, which is a motion that's before us. Typically what we expect is for the applicant to go back with his architect and to take the comments that we gave to heart and hopefully come back with the design modified.
The comment that I mean, I listened to you.
You don't have to do that.
And I just did just what you say, and I don't see the problem with ghost.
You can decide to continue and not listen to the
I'm an
board.
architect like you, and I understand what I'm doing. I understand what you say, but I'm not share your position. Is what it is.
Fine. We get that you don't share the position. We understand that.
Okay, thank you.
So we've heard from the applicant. Do any other comments from the board before we vote?
I would like to say, at least in the interest of clarification, when you mentioned your cause for recommendation of denial is orientation, if you look at the site, that comment is not very helpful because it's not a square site, it's a rectangular site. If you're saying that we need to cut a part of our building off and go taller, that's not an orientation issue. It sounds like you're saying just rotate your building 90 degrees, which we all know you can't do on this site with this building. So if you're going to make a motion that says it's about orientation, it should be valuable, or it should be understandable for any architect to go back and work on it. But your motion of an orientation issue is the pool having southern exposure is easy to understand. This site saying reorient your building, you can't turn it. You can't orient it east.
Arturo, Arturo, this is Robert. You are correct. I believe I would share the same thought of you in that sense. I think that in my problem here is that the building is too long. If you would cut it and you make that south exposure deeper on your pedestal, and if you go taller, that way you could get the pool to be oriented in the back. I think it makes sense. To me, it's forget instance the volumetric. I think that you're pushing the envelope to this limit, and we're treating it with balcony that we're asking for a waiver to intrude into the setback because you're maximizing, because in most cases you only allow 3 feet into the setback. We're asking for more. If the building envelope was a little bit smaller, where you don't have to ask for waiver to intrude, I think, and the back was shorter to allow for that, I think you will get a much better building. Unfortunately, right now we have a motion. I would have preferred, to get recommendation, but recommendation from us, I think that doesn't mean anything to you guys, because even we put a condition on a recommendation, it stays the same, and that's my problem. If you have come in with an envelope that was smaller on the south side, that you allowed for that to be the case, what we're suggesting, and you didn't have to go, to the—
Robert, 1 minute. I thank you for your comment, Robert, but I don't think that the problem is where is the pool located. The pool could be undercover. So I saw many buildings where the pool is covered under the building. In that case, we put it in the setback, but could be under the building, like so many others. I think that the pools are correct where they are. We have a solarium under the building.
Okay,
Robert, we have an applicant that believes that he's correct, and we don't know what we're talking about. I think
that if that's what you feel,
we're wasting time. We got another item to deal with.
There's a motion and a second. I guess we can, I can't do anything about it.
So, can you please call the roll, Vicky?
Mr. Chair, just for clarity, who made the second?
I did.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This is a motion to deny.
Correct. This is a motion to recommend denial to the Director of the Planning Department.
Correct.
Robin Bosco,
Yes.
Mr. Fidel Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Robert Behar,
Yes.
Mr. Willie Bermelo,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
and Ms. Labraja.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, everyone, for your time today.
Thank you, Iris. Vicky, we have one more item.
Yes, the one more item, and actually I need to, if it's okay with you, I need to reopen the discussion item. But we can do that after the discussion item about the November meeting, but we can do that after this item, and then we'll go back to that, if that's okay with you. Okay, the fourth item is the UDRB, it's the proposed calendar for 2021. Please note that the September meeting cannot take place as regularly scheduled because it's Yom Kippur. So we have proposed to reschedule it the day before.
Vicky, can we remove
Yes,
those that don't need to be here for this?
yes.
Vicky, you're referring to Yom Kippur 2021?
Yes, back to that was the September regularly scheduled meeting that takes place on the third Wednesday of the month. That date has to be changed because that date is Yom Kippur, and we do not hold meetings that are acknowledged by the Florida Supreme Court.
So you're suggesting what date?
It would be the Tuesday before, just the day before. So it would be September 14th.
14th, okay. So the dates that you have here in the post shade and the black, those are the dates that are being recommended for
the black. Correct. The black is actually the day of the meeting. The gray one is the deadline for applicants to provide a submittal.
Perfect. Do you need a vote, a motion to approve, this calendar?
Yes, yes, it is, because it's a resolution. So let me go ahead and, if you can make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve those dates.
It's a motion by Robert Behar. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Anthony Sanchez. All in favor? Aye?
Hi.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, those dates are approved, Vicky. We're good to go.
Okay, oh, perfect. And then, as I stated, I'd like to reopen the discussion item about the proposed meeting.
Just for the record, for the previous item that was passed by unanimous vote, since we didn't do a roll call for it, just for the record to reflect.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, Dominic. Assistant Secretary Gibbs. So I'd like to open up the discussion regarding the November meeting. I have been consulting with my colleagues in hearing boards, and I've been advised that I need to obtain further approvals before I can actually schedule that meeting. There's an afternoon meeting on Tuesday the 10th. So I ask that possibly you reconsider the meeting on the Friday the 13th, Monday the 23rd, or Monday the 30th.
So again, you have a problem now with the 10th?
There's a potential problem with the 10th. I have to have it cleared by I have to have it cleared by multiple different departments.
Okay.
So at this time, I cannot confirm that that's that date. I can relay that that is your first choice. And then if you have a second choice, and then we can confirm, or you can decide not to have a meeting at all in November.
How many projects you have for the November meeting?
As of right now, I do not have a confirmed one because the deadline has not reached us yet. But I do know I have 1 to 2 applicants who are preparing or are trying to get clearance in order to move forward.
Can you try to move it to December?
That we can do that. We can cancel the November meeting if that's what you guys want to do. We can cancel the November meeting and just move to December.
I make a motion to cancel the November meeting.
Now, Vicky, we don't really know right now whether we have an item or not, right?
Correct.
Okay, so
Nothing's confirmed.
what if we have an item, and what if the 10th is not an issue?
That's what I'm saying. So I want to have this conversation on the record so that way we can all discuss it together, and you can allow staff to some flexibility and options. So if we do have an item that is available and the 10th is available, that's the option we would want to go with.
Yes.
Yeah, my feelings is that if there's an item and the 10th is available, I mean, I already voted to do it, but I would say from my side, the other dates you gave before, to me, were non-starters. So if there's an item and we can't do it on the 10th and we're moved, then I would say that move is moving everybody to December.
Okay.
Does that seem fair?
Yes. Just for the record, can we make a motion on that?
Okay. Can somebody make a motion?
Robert already did it.
Well, I think the intent is to move forward with November 10th if possible. If not, then the meeting will be canceled.
Yes.
I make the motion.
No.
Do we need to make the motion, or is that?
It's a resolution, so yes, I need it. Actually, no, it's not. It's not a resolution. I'm sorry, I forgot that.
I think you can take the direction from the board without doing it as an official vote. But if you prefer to have them vote on it, Vicky, then they can do that.
What do you prefer, Vicky?
Comfortable with.
If it's okay, I prefer to have a vote on this.
Okay. So Leah, would you want to make that motion, please?
Sure.
Just like the assistant city manager made.
Okay, so make the motion to hold our November meeting on November 10th. Should there be an applicant? Otherwise, we will defer to December.
Should it be applicant and should it be available?
Because it may not be available. Okay, so I have a motion from Ms. Labrada at a second.
I second.
Seconded by Anthony Sanchez. All in favor? Aye. Aye. So
Okay.
unanimously approved.
Thank you.
Okay, folks.
Thank you very much.
That concludes our meeting.
Vicky,
Yes.
with the different resignations, do we know who will be the new planning director?
That has not been confirmed to me yet.
Do you anticipate any delays and?
Not that I'm aware of. Once I know, I can provide it to you.
Okay. It would be great once, if it's someone, particularly if it happens to be a new hire, let's say someone that's coming from outside, if maybe at our next meeting, we could have a little bit of time with that person for discussion.
Okay.
Today, there was an item that was, a comment was made by one of our board members and Assistant City Manager, it does reflect a feeling of our board, because we're a voluntary board, and unlike other boards that serve, at nighttime after work, we take billable time from our business to dedicate to the city on a monthly basis. And when recommendations that may be coming with conditions or a recommendation for denial is simply not adopted or not followed by the administrator, in this case the planning director, there should be some kind of there needs to be a mechanism that there be some kind of communication as to why was it that it wasn't followed, or what was done to mitigate, or what other items were done beyond our edicts here. Because otherwise and I realize we're advisory, but the amount of time that we spend with some of these is considerable. So I think that's maybe just a conversation, doesn't have to be anything too formal, but and it could be, something where there's some additional dialogue between the director and this board. When you get a unanimous approval and you've been here now long enough, you see, we don't deny too many applications.
Correct.
But if we deny something and it's unanimous, it's for a good reason. So
and that was the example that I raised before.
Yes,
there was a unanimous denial of a tower downtown that was approved afterwards.
And I have to tell you that we have a lot of very powerful and influential people. We had one today, but they also come with a lot of humility, and they listen, and they take good advice. Every once in a while, you have someone that doesn't come with an ounce of humility, just the opposite. They will not listen to any advice because they think that they don't need any. So, and that's a problem, because if it's a problem with us, I'll tell you, it's going to be a problem with staff, because they're going to have the same approach with staff in every single department. So I think a conversation with our new director at the appropriate time, Vicky and Madam Assistant City Attorney, would be great to be able to schedule. And if it's not November, maybe the December meeting, maybe a few minutes. Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Be well.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Go vote.